Chapter 41. The moment the last attack landed, the girl and her rocket burst into cheers and clasped each other in victory. The crowd roared its approval, and nearby Pokémon chattered excitedly, eager for their own turn in the arena. Meanwhile, Mewtwo hovered above, its eyes distant. It had temporarily absorbed Owen's mysterious Evergreen Power, using that energy to probe every mind and heart within its reach, trainers and Pokémon alike. It was searching for a creature that harbored deep resentment or an iron will unwilling to be controlled. Yet all it found was Halili, the recently defeated Pokémon, briefly crestfallen, only to rally the instant its trainer offered words of comfort. Such warm, genuine emotion was something Mewtwo had never encountered when working under the Rockets, who only sought to dominate Pokémon and raid their resources. Bewildered, Mewtwo wondered if it had completely misunderstood the nature of these battles. As the crowd began to drift away, a voice rang out from the stands. "Hey, look who just arrived, Owen, the owner of that famous breeding shop." Instantly, all eyes turned to Owen. Spectators surged forward, their curiosity plain on their faces. "I've heard he's a top-tier breeder," one onlooker whispered. "And his energy cubes are supposed to be incredible," added another. Owen found himself at the center of a swarm of eager faces, the air buzzing not with battle cries, but with excited chatter about his legendary creations. "They're delicious, effective, and far cheaper than anything sold at the Pokémon League." "Exactly," another customer chimed in, nibbling on an energy cube. "My team's hooked. Now they won't even think about slacking off. They'll do all the drills they used to hate without a second thought." A young woman nearby spotted Owen watching the demonstration. "Hey there, young man," she called out, pointing toward a cleared space where two trainers were preparing to battle. "Want to jump in and have a match?" Owen waved her off with a polite but firm grin. "No, thank you." He knew exactly what would happen if he accepted just one challenge, a non-stop parade of trainers lining up to test their skills against him. He'd never get a moment's peace, and his stall would become less of a showcase for his energy cubes and more of a free Pokémon arena. "That's too bad," the girl said with a disappointed sigh. She was the trainer of Team Rocket's dazzling Pidgeotto, affectionately nicknamed Rocket Sparrow. She'd hoped to spar with Owen after spotting his majestic Pidgeot perched on his shoulder. Around them, a small crowd of eager young trainers buzzed with excitement at the prospect of a second match. Watching their enthusiasm, Owen felt a spark of inspiration. If he set up a proper mini-battle arena right here, the foot traffic would skyrocket, and so would his energy cube sales. More spectators meant a bigger reputation, more consumption, and ultimately, more profit. A grin played across his face as he imagined the possibilities. Excusing himself from the crowd, Owen turned back to his stall. "All right then," he murmured to himself. "Let's build something even better than an impromptu ring." With that, he began sketching plans in the dirt, his mind already racing ahead to opening day. Owen watched Pidgeot flutter back to its favorite pine tree, a playful smile on his face. After all, there are countless ways to make a Pokémon happy, and enjoying a meal together was only one of them. Once the last of the onlookers drifted away, he turned his attention to the spot where Mewtwo had just been standing. The pink, ethereal figure had vanished as suddenly as it appeared. Then, without warning, a pale white envelope drifted down from the sky and landed squarely in Owen's outstretched hand. He broke the seal, and in an instant an illusory form of Mewtwo materialized before him, not the delicate, boyish disguise it had worn earlier, but its true, imposing self. Clenching its fist, Mewtwo spoke in a resonant, almost regal tone. "You've shown me the truth. I was too blinded by my own pure prejudices about the bonds between humans and Pokémon. From now on, I will explore every kind of human-Pokémon relationship firsthand. And to guide this journey, I will create a special trial, a game that selects one trainer to experience these tests alongside me." Mewtwo paused, its glowing eyes meeting Owen's. "Inside this envelope lies a fragment of my power. Should you ever find yourself in need, simply tear it open, and I will come to your aid." The holographic figure flickered softly, lingering in the air as if awaiting Owen's reply. Owen smiled as Mewtwo's last words faded into the warm afternoon air. After a thoughtful pause, he spoke softly. "I don't care what kind of game you play in this town. Every idea is yours to explore. When you first arrived, you were so full of anger toward humans. If you ever feel that darkness again, I hope you'll remember this place. And if you ever miss the food here, you know you're always welcome. I'll be ready for you." For a long moment, Mewtwo's silhouette drifted silently, then dissolved into ethereal energy and vanished. Far above Wutong Town, the legendary Pokémon hovered in the clouds, gazing down at the streets below. "He saw through me from the start?" Mewtwo wondered aloud, a trace of surprise in its voice. It lingered a while longer, then retrieved a Pokeball from its waist. "Well, this really is a beautiful town," it admitted. Suddenly, a small, gooey figure drifted into view. Milo, its round eyes blinked up at Mewtwo. "Bring rain to the town," it pleaded. Mewtwo sighed, but its lips curved in a faint smile. "All right." 3 days later, on July 24th, Wutong Town felt noticeably cooler. Along the bluestone paths, the tall grasses still held beads of moisture. A dark cloud had drifted in 3 days before, gathering overhead until it finally broke, blessing the town with gentle, life-giving rain. A sudden, torrential downpour swept over Wutong Town, transforming the long dry river into a rushing torrent in an instant. After a month without rain, the deluge was a blessing the townsfolk had nearly lost hope of ever seeing again. At the plantation just outside the cultivation house, the landscape was alive with growth. On the 2 main plots, pepper plants bowed under the weight of ripe, blood-red fruits, each nearly as large as an apple, carefully supported by forked wooden props to keep their branches from snapping. Nearby, a fresh row of turnips peeked from the earth, their snowy white roots promising a tender harvest. In the melon patch, watermelons had swelled almost overnight. In just 3 days, they'd reached basketball size, their pale green stripes striking against the deep rind. Only another day or 2 remained before they'd be ready to eat. Even the grass had rebounded, a second wave of lush emerald blades sweeping across the fields and reflecting like a painting in the newly filled reservoir. Everywhere Owen looked, life seemed to pulse with renewed vigor, everywhere except his own mood. With the green vine snake coiled at his side, Owen bent to pick the most mature vegetables, dropping each one into his storage ball. He paused, letting out a low, restless sigh. Despite the bounty before him, a nagging unease twisted in his chest. What lay ahead on this suddenly fertile land, he could not yet tell, but he sensed his journey was only just beginning. Owen sank to one knee at the edge of the field, wiping sweat from his brow. Ever since he'd discovered how easily his psychic-type Pokémon could harvest the ripe crops, he'd never wanted to go back to doing it by hand. 30 minutes of telekinetic harvesting later, the sun had climbed high overhead, and the tray of fallen fruit sat ready at his feet. He glanced up at Superior, his sleek emerald serpent Pokémon, whose vine whip had just retracted. It had been 3 or 4 days since her evolution, and Owen wanted to be sure her energy reserves were fully stabilized before pushing her further. Reaching into his pack, he produced a single intermediate candy and offered it out. "Here you go. Try this." Superior's great golden eyes widened. "Vine?" she murmured, tilting her head. Hadn't Owen said these candies no longer worked on newly evolved Pokémon? "They're upgraded," Owen explained with a grin. "This one's new." He tossed a normal candy into the air, whereas Pidgeot swooped in from above to snatch it neatly between his talons. The big bird let out a happy chirp before spiraling back into the sky. Owen watched Pidgeot wheel overhead, thoughts drifting to the bird's untamed territory in the nearby wilderness. Reclaiming that stretch of mountainside and mastering new aerial techniques would take time, but he was determined to explore every corner of this region he called home. Just then, his cell phone buzzed. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, and Owen's gut told him this call was anything but ordinary. Owen lifted the phone to his ear. "Hello? Hello, Mr. Owen? This is Want Supermarket calling. The starter Pokémon eggs you reserved are ready for pickup," the clerk's voice said. At once, Owen's eyes brightened. Starter Pokémon eggs. He had been counting the days. "Thank you," he replied, already swinging his satchel over his shoulder. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. A brisk wind whipped through the streets as Owen hurried into Want Supermarket. Inside, the air was warm and sweet with produce. He spotted the clerk, Ms. Gao, by the cold storage counter, carefully lifting a carton into a bubble-lined bag. "You found them," Owen said as he approached. Ms. Gao smiled. We've been saving them for you all morning. 3 eggs, just as you requested. Owen gently took the bag. Each egg was nestled in a soft bed of foam, one pale blue, one sunny yellow, and one with faint pink swirls. His heart thumped. These would be the first new helpers on his plantation. Thanks again, he said, fishing out his credit card. The clerk processed the order, then handed him a printed receipt. Good luck with the hatchlings, she added. I intend to raise them well, Owen promised. Back at the plantation, the late afternoon sun burned gold across the fields. Owen hurried to his incubator shed and placed the eggs inside. He cleaned nearby tools, checked water troughs, and adjusted the temperature gauge. Every few minutes, he glanced at the incubator's countdown timer. As twilight settled, the timer chimed. The incubator's door hissed open. Owen crouched, his breath catching. The pink-swirled egg cracked first. A tiny, chirping Pokémon poked its head through the shell, bright eyes blinking in the dim light. Then the yellow egg quivered, cracking open to reveal another newcomer. Finally, the pale blue egg split apart, and the third hatchling tumbled out, looking around with curious wonder. Owen couldn't suppress his grin. 3 healthy, eager Pokémon, each destined to help him cultivate his plantation, water the fields, carry harvests, and perhaps even defend the crops at dusk. He reached out and gently patted the little trio. Welcome home, he whispered. I think we're going to make a great team. Chapter 42. After 3 days of steady rain, the online frenzy over the baby cup finally began to subside. Here at Owen's breeding shop, daily traffic leveled off. Roughly 100 trainers showed up each day, mostly return customers, keen to stock up on energy blocks. Though the hype had cooled, the system still rewarded Owen generously. Every day brought him a mix of rare skill discs and mysterious treasures. This week's haul included discs for Grass Slide, Aquatail, Grass Pledge, Flame Burst, Protect, Surf, and Hurricane. Owen promptly transferred most of those to his Green Vine snakes, bolstering their movesets. The remaining discs, ones that didn't suit his team, he tucked away for future sale. Alongside the discs, he'd collected batches of special amplifier tree fruits, common but potentially powerful. Owen's mind raced with possibilities. If he could incorporate those amplified fruits into bespoke energy blocks, imbuing them with unique buffs, he'd attract a higher caliber of trainer. After all, plain physical and maintenance blocks only appealed to newcomers and casuals. To lure top-tier challengers to his breeding shop, he needed standout products. Crafting specialized energy blocks from these amplifier fruits would be the perfect next step. And in Owen's experience, that kind of edge was often the difference between a good shop and a legendary one. Owen stared at his Douyin dashboard, frustration tugging at his sleeve. The stronger a Pokémon performed on his channel, the richer the rewards. But ByteDance's algorithm still wasn't showing him much love. Thanks to the recent Baby Cup tournament buzz, he'd managed to pull in 10,000 followers, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't exactly fireworks either. The silver lining? His videos boasted high view-through and conversion rates. Whoever was watching all the way. He clicked on his latest upload, a montage of Melodic and Mienshao irrigating his vegetable fields. First, Melodic's sinuous form wound through the ankle-deep water, its glassy scales sparkling under the sun. Then Mienshao stepped in, its slender limbs deftly stirring up ripples, sending arcing sprays across row upon row of seedlings. Every droplet caught the light, every movement was poetry in motion. The comments blew up. Holy, Melodic? Using it to water veggies? That's such a waste. I want one in my home. So beautiful. Blogger, how did you tame a Melodic to be so obedient? Piece of cake. Caught it when it was just a ratty Phoebus. Evolve it. Earn its loyalty. Wish I could afford those pearly scales. Owen grinned. They had no clue what season of hard work and training lay behind that footage. But he knew one thing. He only needed one truly viral clip to ignite the algorithm. Once that happened, he could expand, launch online seed and produce sales, maybe even open a proper Pokémon run farm. The breakthrough was out there, waiting. All he had to do was catch it. Owen stepped out of the plantation grinning. Sell your energy cubes to various alliances. Let all Pokémon be happy, he muttered, already picturing the flood of system rewards that would follow. Pulling out his device, he checked yesterday's livestream stats. Over 50,000 views, more than 3,000 likes, and upwards of 800 comments. It was encouraging. His ambitions felt a little closer, even though he knew he still had to take things one step at a time. He sent a quick message to Chin Shu. "Keep an eye on the breeding house today. Let me know if anything comes up." With that settled, he nodded to his green vine snake and led it out of the plantation. Lately, the town had grown busier, and even the usually low-key bus driver had started running multiple trips each day. In theory, it was more convenient, but in practice, it created new headaches. Stopping at the town's gate, Owen crouched beside his Pokémon. "After you evolve," he said gently, "you won't be able to ride the bus." The green vine snake was already nearly 1.5 meters long. Once it evolved, its size would exceed the public transport limit entirely. Owen sighed. So, leaving transportation logistics would be his next challenge. Tang tang. The green vine snake glanced down at his newly evolved body and couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. Before evolution, his forelimbs had been shorter and more graceful, and he could curl up comfortably whenever he pleased. Now his arms felt oddly stubby, and he'd lost the ability to sprawl out the way he used to. "Come on, let's go to Want supermarket," Owen called, breaking his companion's reverie. Obediently, the vine snake followed as Owen navigated the bustling streets. Soon they arrived at the supermarket entrance, where the manager, Chi Heng, was waiting. The moment Chi Heng spotted Owen, he plastered on a winning smile. "Glad you could make it," he said warmly. Chi Heng was nothing if not a thorough businessman. Judging costs and benefits was second nature to him. After last season's Baby Cup, even though his child, Chi Chang, hadn't taken first place, Chi Chang's graceful concession had won over the online community. Viewers praised him as a trainer who honored friendship and loyalty, and Chi Heng's pride in his son soared along with his public image. Add to that the generous support Owen had provided during the competition, and the whispers that he was a senior breeder of considerable skill, and Chi Heng found himself viewing Owen in a new light. This young man wasn't just another participant. He was someone to be courted, not crossed. Owen followed Chief Kai through the bustling aisles of the Pokémon Superstore, slipping past curious shoppers until they reached a reinforced door guarded by 2 enforcement officers and a pair of imposing Caterpie. After Chief Kai flashed his credentials, the guards stepped aside and let them in. Inside, powerful overhead lights glinted off row upon row of glass display cases, each one holding a single Pokémon egg. Lab technicians in white coats moved among the cases, periodically lifting eggs to check their temperature and vitality. "Right this way," Chief Kai said, guiding Owen toward a specially marked section. "These are the eggs from the 3 classic starter lineages." They paused before a dozen neatly arranged eggs. Small placards beside each one bore detailed information. Pokémon, Charmander, gender, female, parentage, bred from a 6-year-old, Gym League Charizard. Suspected inherited moves, Bite. Pokémon Bulbasaur, gender female, parentage, bred from a 7-year-old Gym League Venusaur. Suspected inherited move, Leech. Squirtle, gender male, bred from an 8-year-old Gym League Blastoise. Suspected inherited moves, Water Gun, Withdraw. Owen's heart raced. He leaned closer to inspect the eggs, each one promising the bond of a lifetime and the first step of his journey as a trainer. Owen stepped up to the display and blinked in surprise. Row after row of Pokémon eggs gleamed under the bright lights. Bulbasaur, Chikorita, Froakie, even one labeled Halili. Most of them were the classic starters from Kanto, Johto, and Kalos, yet none of the eggs held the psychic power he was hoping for. He'd come here in search of his dream partner, a psychic-type Pokémon, and so far, nothing in sight. "I could have sworn Want Supermarket doesn't actually sell Pokémon," Owen muttered under his breath, leaning closer to inspect the engravings on the shells. "So what's going on here?" He let his gaze wander over the other eggs, the bright green shell of a Caterpie, the fiery sheen of what looked like a Rapidash egg, the round, polka-dotted blue of a Marill, the striped oval of a Centreg, even a small, bristly Tippig seed nestled in its carton. The Donghua Alliance was well known for its diplomatic ties and trade agreements with neighboring groups, so it made sense they'd occasionally import rare species, but Owen still felt a twinge of wonder. A friendly voice drifted over his shoulder. "Looking for something special?" Owen turned to see Chi Heng standing there, arms folded in amusement. "Exactly," Owen admitted. "I was hoping Fa, are a psychic type. Chai-Heng's smile widened. That explains a lot. At our Want supermarket headquarters, we recently ran an egg guessing contest, and it was such a success that we're launching it in every branch. It gives up-and-coming trainers a shot at winning rare Pokémon they might never afford otherwise, and it helps everyone network with breeders and alliance officials. Owen nodded, understanding at last. He straightened, feeling a spark of excitement despite his disappointment. So it's not just a retail display, it's a competition. Exactly, Chai-Heng said, patting the counter. Place your bets, take your best guesses, and who knows, you might hatch exactly what you're looking for. Owen met the array of eggs again, determination back in his chest. Psychic or not, he wasn't leaving without a plan. Looks like you'll need more Pokémon eggs than we first thought, Chai-Heng said with an apologetic shrug. Owen nodded, surveying the dozen or so eggs laid out before him. A flicker of disappointment passed through him. None of these looked like they'd hatch into a psychic type. So there aren't any psychic Pokémon here? No Ralts, Munna, or Meowth? Chai-Heng winced, rubbing the back of his neck. Psychic types are pretty rare around here. The only way we ever get them is through the egg lottery at headquarters. I see, Owen murmured, turning back to examine the lineup of starter Pokémon eggs. Just as he was lost in thought, a sharp voice rang out from across the room. Uh-oh, this isn't good. Chapter 43. Not far off the path, a Pokémon caretaker was tending to a crate of eggs when he slipped on a loose stone. One egg wobbled at the edge of the crate and tumbled straight toward the ground. His heart slammed in his chest. If it broke on impact, the life inside would be lost. In the instant before disaster, a firm hand shot out and caught the egg by its base. Whoa, that was close, Owen sighed, gently cradling the shell. He turned it over in his palm, marveling at its icy white surface etched with delicate snowflake patterns. The moment his fingers made contact, a chill radiated through his skin. This wasn't just cold, it was the tremor of a Pokémon on the verge of hatching, unconsciously releasing energy as it prepared to break free. And judging by the strength of that energy, this little one's potential had to be exceptional. Owen tapped a few commands on his wrist device, and the egg's profile appeared. Pokémon, Vulpix, gender, female, ability, Snowcloak, potential rating, red, individual values, HP 24, attack 25, defense 27, special attack 31, special defense 25, speed 31. Level 0, moves, Hypnosis, Moonblast, Tail Whip, Freeze Dry. Intimacy 10, she's aware of your presence. Hatch Urge 50, determined to break free. Estimated hatch time, within 60 minutes. Owen glanced back at the caretaker, then down at the egg. A grin tugged at his lips. You've got quite the entrance planned, little one, he murmured. Let's see what you've got in store. As the air around them grew colder, Owen settled into a crouch, ready to witness a brand new bond form before his eyes. Why are you so careless? Chai-Heng stormed over, only to spin around a moment later with a relieved grin. Thank you, Owen. If it weren't for you, that Alolan Vulpix might not have made it. He shot Owen a glance of genuine surprise. They'd been standing side by side mere seconds ago, and then, in an instant, Owen had leapt more than 10 meters away to snatch the falling egg out of midair. That was no ordinary reflex. It was the mark of a seasoned trainer. Even Chai-Heng, who dealt with Alolan Pokémon before, couldn't hide his admiration. That was incredible. Owen gently cradled the fragile shell in his hands, his smile growing. The customers at his daycare were always raving about the energy cubes he stocked. Perfect taste, fair price. The only complaint was the heat. After days of rain, the air outside felt cooler, but inside his shop it still felt like a sauna. Installing an air conditioner had been on his to-do list for weeks. Now, with this ice-type Vulpix egg in his care, he'd actually save enough from cube sales to cover the cost. And better yet, this wasn't just any egg, it was an Alolan Vulpix with a rare red rating, a sign of extraordinary potential. Owen's luck seemed almost too good to be true. His heart racing, he met Chai-Heng's eyes and asked without hesitation, "Can I choose this egg?" Chai-Heng was momentarily speechless. He blinked, then slowly scratched his chin, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Chapter 8. The Alolan Vulpix Egg. Owen stepped onto the bustling floor of the Donghua Alliance's Pokémon Exchange, excitement twisting in his gut. In most regions, an Alolan Ice Vulpix ranked below the 3 standard starter Pokémon in raw value. Here in the Alliance, however, its extreme rarity balanced the scales. Its price tag rivaled those coveted first partner eggs. Ahead of him stood Chi Heng, a well-known high-level breeder, smoothing the frosted surface of the egg he'd just sold Owen. Chi Heng's grin was almost as sharp as the Vulpix's icy lineage. Alolan Vulpix may be a bit cheaper than a starter Pokémon egg, he said, but because they're so scarce in the Alliance, their market value ends up nearly identical. Thank you, Owen replied, lifting the egg carefully. A faint chill seeped through the cocoon-like shell, and he pictured the creature's silky, snow-white fur. In the height of summer, that cool coat would be a godsend, and once it evolved into an Ice Ninetails, its 9 luxurious tails would make the perfect pillow for trainers on long expeditions. After registering the egg at the exchange terminal, Owen paused. The hatch window was less than an hour away. He still needed supplies. Swiping his Alliance-issued payment card, he ordered several cartons of Moo Moo milk from the nearby Pokemart kiosk, ideal for giving the newborn Vulpix a nutritional head start. Then he slipped into Trainer's Secret, the little boutique tucked into a corner of the Pokemon district, and picked up a bottle of pink perfume, known to stimulate an egg's development. Footsteps echoing through the corridors, Owen set off toward the breeding house, clutching his shopping bags. Every second counted. Before the hour was out, his Alolan Vulpix would break shell, and a brand new chapter of his journey would begin. When Owen got home, he didn't even pause to greet Chin-Shu. He headed straight for the nursery pens, where the Ice Vulpix egg was already glowing softly. He took down a bottle of Moo Moo milk, poured a generous amount into a bowl, then grabbed a pair of chopsticks. As he stirred, he sprinkled in a fine pink perfume powder. The powder's light, floral scent not only deepened the milk's flavor, but also had a mild, numbing effect. And best of all, it made any newborn Pokémon instantly more affectionate toward its trainer. Item: C-rank Moo Moo milk description. Moo Moo milk blended with a subtle perfumed powder. Though the preparation is somewhat rustic, the milk's flavor is fully brought out. Cooking effect. After drinking, a newborn Pokémon's energy growth rate increases by 25%, and the milk has a slight anesthetic property. "What's that, Tang Tang?" Owen called over his shoulder. At the sound of his voice, the green vine snake flicked its rosy tongue and licked its lips, its eyes bright with eager anticipation. "Would you like some too?" Owen held out the bottle of milk to the green vine snake curled at his feet. Tang Tang sniffed the air once, then shook its head as if to say it wasn't interested. When Owen turned his attention back to the egg cradled in his arms, the snake promptly swiveled, its bright eyes fixed eagerly on the shell, clearly intrigued by the promise of a new companion. Owen chuckled softly. "This is just kid's milk," he said, ruffling Tang Tang's scales affectionately. "I'm going into Huaqiao village tomorrow. I'll pick up a few big canisters, so we'll never run out. Don't worry, Li Wei will have all the milk she needs." The sweet, creamy aroma made even Owen's own mouth water, but he resisted the urge to taste it himself. No sooner had he spoken than the egg in his arms began to glow with a pearly white light, pulsing as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Owen leaned closer, excitement dancing in his chest. With a soft crack, the shell split open. First came a tiny, damp paw, then a pair of crystal blue eyes blinking up at him. The newborn Ice Vulpix wriggled free, its silvery fur dusted with frost. It let out a gentle whimper and fixed Owen with a curious, half-lidded stare. At the sight of his warm, kind smile, and smelling the comforting scent on his clothes, the little creature's tail gave a hopeful twitch. Owen reached out a hand, and Li Wei nuzzled it instantly, already tamed by his gentle presence. Owen held his breath as the tiny Ice Vulpix inched forward, its frosty paws trembling on the snow-packed ground. Tentatively, it stretched out a single claw, as if to touch him, but then faltered, eyes wide with uncertainty. Smiling, Owen dipped a fingertip into the creamy Moo Moo milk and waved it gently in front of the Vulpix. Instantly, the little fox's hesitation vanished. With a swift motion, it scrambled forward, leapt into Owen's arms, and wrapped its soft muzzle around his finger, lapping up the milk with obvious delight. Its eyes narrowed in contentment. "Easy there, there's plenty more," Owen chuckled softly. Cradling the bowl of fresh Moo Moo milk, he held it just out of reach. The newborn Vulpix wasted no time. It pressed its wet fur against his arm and dove face first into the bowl, licking greedily until its entire snout was coated in white foam. As it drank, Owen felt a warm bond forming between them. System message: Congratulations! Vulpix's affection has increased from 50% to 88%. You have earned a reward. Chapter 44. Congratulations! Your Vulpix's happiness has jumped from 50% to 88%. Rewards granted: 10 bags of golden Kella, 3 magic candies, and a soothing bell. Long-term use will boost trainer Pokémon affinity. Vulpix finished every drop of Moo Moo milk in her bowl, let out a contented burp, and fixed Owen with a sleepy gaze. She murmured, about to say more when her heavy eyelids betrayed her. Between being a newly caught Pokémon and the mild sedative in the milk, she was already fighting sleep. Owen sighed and reached out. Hold on, I wanted to give you a quick wash before you nodded off. But before he could finish, Vulpix curled up on the spot and was fast asleep. Owen couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. Gently scooping her into his arms, he made his way down the trail to the reservoir. The water here was forever pristine, thanks to the guardian Melodic, whose powers kept the reservoir clear no matter how hard it rained. Owen knelt at the water's edge and set Vulpix down on the smooth stone basin. Mienshao, he called, glancing back to where his calm, ice-type companion lay half-dozing on the bank. Use Icy Beam to freeze this surface for me. Even in her light slumber, Mienshao raised her paw, summoned a concentrated streak of frost, and spread a thin sheet of ice over the water. Owen nodded in satisfaction. With the pool frozen solid, it would be easy to give Vulpix a gentle, mud-free bath once she stirred awake. Owen gently guided Melodic to the edge of the pool. To avoid waking the sleeping Vulpix, he asked his Milditch, the sleek, sea crystal-empowered Melodic, to summon a thin layer of ice across the water's surface. With a precise tap of her tail, Melodic froze a perfect platform. From there, Owen carved a small opening, scooped up the slime-coated Vulpix, and let it rest in the icy cradle. Now, Melodic, Owen instructed, just a gentle rinse. With a graceful inhale, Melodic expelled a soft spray of water. The stream washed over the little fire type, sweeping away every last trace of slime until its russet fur gleamed clean and damp. Owen took a moment to admire how far Melodic had come. Thanks to the ocean crystals, she'd been improving by leaps and bounds. Every day she grew stronger, adding new moves, Ice Beam, Dragon Tail, Hydro Cannon, Mysterious Guardian, to her repertoire. Her trust in Owen was absolute and her mood bright. Together, they were ready for anything. Gym time's almost here, Owen said, lifting the revived Ice Vulpix from the makeshift ice pool. As droplets trickled from its coat, the chill in the air caused them to freeze on contact. A delicate mist of frost drifted around the fox, proof that even without sunglasses, this ice-type Vulpix was already making its mark. Owen smiled. With Melodic's support and their newest ally clean and ready, he felt more confident than ever about the upcoming gym battle. Owen watched in amazement as the tiny ice Vulpix twitched in its sleep, exhaling a whisper of frosty mist that danced around its silvery white fur. Even half awake, the hatchling seemed to be practicing its new ability, its coat puffing out softly like spun cotton. "You've already mastered Ice Breath?" Owen murmured, kneeling beside the curled-up fox. It hadn't even finished drying off after hatching, and yet here it was, instinctively wielding a move most Pokémon struggled with for months. If his other partners had witnessed that display, they wouldn't know what hit them, especially Squirtle, who still flinched at the memory of that first icy blast. Unable to resist its charm, Owen scooped the Vulpix into his arms and carried it back to his room. On his desk, the green ivy snake gave him a narrow-eyed glare, as if to say, "Is this the new favorite?" In his rush, Owen hadn't prepared a proper nest, so he gently laid the little fox on his own bed. Remembering how eagerly it had gulped down milk earlier, and knowing that newborns go through it by the bottleful, he made a mental note to stock up on nothing but the best Moo Moo milk before sunrise. Owen knew that easing a few milk tanks wasn't just about hatching new Pokémon, it was a clever way to make extra income, too. Their milk could be sold to the breeding facility, boosting the newborn's happiness all at once. It was like hitting 2 targets with a single arrow. He turned to his green ivy snake. "I need you to keep an eye on the Vulpix for me. If it wakes up, play with it. Just don't let it start crying. I'm heading to Huaqiao village to try and work out a deal. The ivy snake cocked its head in confusion, as if to ask, "Watch the baby?" Owen gave a quick nod. "Exactly. Can you handle that?" After a moment, relief spread across the snake's features. "Got it. I'll take care of her." With that settled, Owen dashed out of the room, leaving the ivy snake alone by the sleeping ice vulpix, its eyes thoughtful as it watched over the little creature. Huaqiao village might still be called a village, but its scale dwarfed Wutong town, thanks largely to the massive dairy farm dominating its outskirts. Now that Owen had some cash in hand, he didn't flinch at travel expenses. He hailed a taxi from Wutong City and made the trip in under an hour. The moment the taxi rolled into town, Owen was struck by the sea of green rolling past the windows, wide, grassy pastures dotted with grazing herds, neat barns lining the fields, and the faint scent of fresh hay in the air. This place was big, and it was exactly where he needed to be. Owen stood at the edge of the pasture, awed by the endless swath of green before him. The terrain was perfectly flat, the soil rich, and the grass so lush it gleamed in the afternoon sun, stretching away in every direction as far as the eye could see. A sturdy fence enclosed the field, bisected only by a single, well-worn road. He couldn't help a pang of self-consciousness. Compared to these vast, thriving pastures, his own modest plot back in Wutong town felt like a drop in the ocean. All he could do now was hope that the grass he'd grown there would somehow outshine this famed ranch's bounty. "Young man," came a voice behind him. Owen turned to see an elderly gentleman strolling up, hands clasped behind his back, eyes bright with curiosity. "You don't look like a local farmer. Are you here as one of the traveling graduates, hoping to challenge our pasture gym?" Owen blinked in surprise. Of course, the season for recent high school graduates to tour the region and test their herding skills had just begun. He forced a polite smile. "Actually, sir, I'm not here for the gym. I run a small plantation in Wutong town." The old man stopped mid-step and raised an eyebrow. "Wutong town? Didn't that plantation go under last year?" Owen's heart sank. He squared his shoulders, determined not to let this chance slip away. "It did face some setbacks," he admitted, "but I've rebuilt from the ground up. I came here to learn from the best and prove that my recovery isn't just talk." The old man studied him for a long moment, then let out a low chuckle. "Bold words. Very well. Let's see if your grass and your spirit measure up." With that, he turned and beckoned Owen to follow along the fence line, deeper into the ranch. As they walked, Owen felt both his nerves and his excitement surge. Here, among these acres of emerald grass, he would have his chance to earn respect, to show what he'd accomplished, and to stake his claim in the world of pasture mastery. "You are." The old man's voice trailed off as recognition dawned on him. A warm, nostalgic smile broke across his face. "No wonder you look so familiar. You're Shaolin's son, aren't you? Have you taken over your father's ranch?" Owen forced an awkward chuckle. His father had never been a household name in the Donghua Alliance. He'd spent his youth wandering from place to place, getting into all kinds of trouble. Owen braced himself, half expecting the stranger to claim, "My, how you've grown. I remember holding you as a baby." Instead, the old man simply laughed. "Just keep going down this road for about a kilometer. You'll reach the entrance to the Rand Milking Ranch. By now, the owner is probably out in the fields, feeding the cows and milking them." Relief washed over Owen. "Thank you very much." He picked up his pace and strode along the lane until the pasture opened before him. A herd of massive dairy cows grazed leisurely in the sun, their calm presence filling the field. At the fence line ahead, Owen spotted a deliberately left open gate, the welcoming entrance to the ranch. Owen paused before a roughly hewn wooden gate. Pushing it open, he slipped into the barn and spotted a burly man crouched beside a placid cow, his strong hands coaxing steady streams of milk into a polished pail. Along the rafters, more than a dozen metal churns gleamed in neat rows, ready to be filled. The cow leaned into the farmer's touch, her eyes half closed in contentment. Clearing his throat, Owen stepped forward. "Hello." Without looking up, the man replied, "There's a gym challenge this afternoon. If you want fresh milk, you'll need to book it ahead of time." Owen shook his head and offered a polite smile. "Actually, I'm not here about milk. Do you accept hay deliveries?" The farmer paused, hands suspended in mid-milking. Hey? He redirected his gaze toward Owen, brows knitting as he took in Owen's familiar face. A flicker of recognition and surprise crossed the man's broad features. You're. Chapter 45. Owen stared at the burly stranger who just called out his father's name. Another one of Dad's friends? He couldn't help a small sigh of relief. His father's acquaintances were usually straightforward to deal with. No hidden agendas, no awkward small talk. If you mean the former owner of that herb plantation in Wutong Town, the stranger said, striding toward him in long, confident steps, then yes, that's exactly my father. The man came to a halt only a few feet away and appraised Owen from head to toe, as if inspecting a prize stallion. Huh, he murmured, that build, that bearing, you're your father's very image. He reached out and patted Owen's shoulders twice, chuckling heartily. Owen felt a flash of embarrassment. He had no idea what was so funny, but the gesture was friendly enough. He forced a polite smile. By the way, stepping back and extending a hand, what's your name? Owen. The man clapped his hands together. Owen, good strong name. Your father and I go way back. Since I was always freewheeling with him, let's keep things simple. Call me Uncle Moo. He brushed imaginary dust off his palm. You mentioned your family grows grass. I'm very curious to see the quality of your crop. Owen nodded. Sure, whenever you're ready. Uncle Moo gave him an approving nod, then turned and strode off toward the edge of the courtyard. Owen followed, uncertain what to expect, but determined to make a good impression. Owen reached into his storage ball and pulled out a handful of fresh grass. Just as he was about to hand it over, a big hand swooped in and snatched it away. Whoa! Yimu's voice caught in his throat as he inspected the blades. For an herbivore like Miltank, there are really only two secrets to top-quality Moo Moo fresh milk. One is the Miltank's own strength. A stronger Miltank produces richer, more nutritious milk. The other is the feed. Nothing, not even energy cubes, can match genuinely high-grade grass. He squeezed a blade between his fingers, tore off a small piece, and popped it into his mouth. His eyes lit up. This grass is incredible. Honestly, it's the best I've ever seen. How much do you have? Yimu asked eagerly. I'll take every last blade. Owen gave a rueful shrug. Actually, it's not much. I only grew it for fun. With that, he released the rest of the grass from his storage ball. A lush green mound, weighing nearly 100 pounds, spilled onto the ground. Owen laid the freshly harvested grass from his storage orb across the table. So why do you grow all this? Just for fun? Yimu's lip twitched. The question rang exactly like one Owen's father had once faced. When someone asked the elder why he'd returned to farming after conquering alliance after alliance, he'd replied, I plant it for fun. And yet every single crop he touched had thrived. A soft chuckle escaped Yimu as memories of those early days flooded back, especially how his prized milk tank herd had been nourished entirely on Owen's father's harvests. He shook his head with a wry smile. I have to admit, you've inherited your old man's green thumb, pervy streak and all. Owen scratched the back of his neck. Okay, but what about the price? Yimu stroked his beard, considering. 100 gold per pound, for now. Your grass is top quality, but it's young. As the batches mature and get even better, I'll raise the price accordingly. Thank you, Uncle Moo, Owen said, genuinely relieved. He didn't know whether that was a fair rate. Money wasn't his primary concern. But Yemu's straightforward, good-natured manner put him at ease. This man had clearly been a friend of his father's long ago, and Owen was glad to have his support now. Owen cleared his throat and chose his words carefully. Uncle Moo, I was wondering, are any of the Miltank at the ranch for sale? Yemu looked up, frowning. More Miltank? I thought your farm was still pretty small. Owen hurried to explain. I only need 2, really. I'd like to start producing fresh milk, just enough to stock the shop. Yemu paused, then raised an eyebrow. As it happened, he'd recently rehoused a group of year-old Miltank he was preparing to sell to other aspiring ranchers. Letting 2 go wouldn't be a problem. Still, he couldn't resist a bit of playful payback. After all, more than 10 years ago, he'd been the one to crush Owen's grandfather at the Pastoria gym without a second thought. All right, he said slowly, I can spare 2. But, before you take them home, you'll have to challenge the Pastoria gym. Owen's lips curved into a confident smile. He'd grown up hearing the tale of his grandfather's defeat at Yemu's hands, and now it was his turn. From the look of him, he wasn't yet off at college. If he were, he'd be traveling for school, not visiting family. Sending out one of his top Pokémon to test the waters sounded perfectly reasonable. He nodded. Consider it a deal. I'll be at the gym tomorrow. Owen stared at Yimu in disbelief. But I didn't bring any Pokémon with me. Yimu smiled. That's fine. The gym challenge doesn't start until this afternoon. You still have plenty of time to prepare. Head back home, get your team ready, and return later. A disgruntled moo came from the huge Miltank standing nearby. It sounded put out that Yimu had walked away mid-milking. Yimu waved it off, and Owen gave the big Pokémon a brief nod of apology before stepping outside to hail a Didi taxi. Back at home, Owen filled in his partner, Teng Teng, the grass-type vine serpent, on everything that had happened. Teng Teng bobbed its head eagerly, as if to say, I understand. Just then, the ice-type six-tailed fox stirred from its slumber. It blinked up at Owen with frosty, curious eyes while snuggling against Teng Teng's coils. Owen couldn't help but smile. Despite their opposing elements, the two Pokémon had bonded already, exactly the teamwork he'd hoped to see. Okay, Teng Teng? Owen asked softly. Teng Teng chirped in response, and the ice fox gave a quiet yip, as if to say it was ready too. With his team gathered, Owen felt a surge of confidence. This afternoon's gym challenge would be one to remember. Do you want to bring Vulpix along? Owen paused. Leaving Vulpix alone would be too much responsibility for a new trainer. After a moment's thought, he shook his head. No, this time I'll take Milotic and Pidgeot. You stay here and look after Vulpix. It clearly likes you. He turned the decision over in his mind. The next gym challenge was a grass type, probably featuring a dream item Miltank, so half of Viper's moves wouldn't be very effective. Pidgeot's flying type would cover that weakness nicely, and he'd include Miltank simply for reliability. After all, city-level gyms were meant for fresh graduates, and the opponents couldn't field top-tier Pokémon, right? Viper tilted its head and shook off any concern about the upcoming battle. Its attention was completely fixed on Vulpix and on asserting itself as the household's big sister. That, Owen knew, was the real mission. Chapter 46. Back in Huaqiao Town, Owen's goal was crystal clear. He needed to challenge the Grassland Gym, and then use his prize money to buy back 2 large milk tanks. As he approached the outskirts of town, he was surprised to see gym leader Yimu standing at the entrance to the vast grasslands. This was prime time for new trainers to set out, and a city-level gym leader like Yimu should have been swamped with challengers. Yet, the grassland gym remained oddly quiet. Word had spread that facing Yimu was no simple task. His signature Pokémon, Bulbasaur, could summon a lush green terrain at will, its roots snaking through the ground to entangle foes. On top of that, moves like Leech Seed, Poison Powder, and Protect made it nearly impossible for non-grass types to gain the upper hand. With such a built-in field advantage, most local trainers opted to stay on safer turf. Back so soon? Yimu called out, shading his eyes against the midday sun as Owen drew near. Owen offered a wry smile. I wanted to find out, what kind of challenge are you setting today? He was eager to earn that badge and finally get his milk tanks. Time to get down to business. Yimu shook his head. Come with me. He turned and strode ahead, and Owen, still a bit puzzled, fell into step behind him. In a few moments they arrived at a simple cowshed. Roughly nailed wooden planks formed the walls, patched here and there with plastic roller blinds, and a low canopy overhead shielded the interior from the scorching sun. Inside, each cow had its own stall, the floor carpeted with dry hay. The animals munched contentedly, but what really caught Owen's attention was the cool breeze circulating around them. An air conditioner had been installed in this makeshift barn. At 2 p.m, when even the hungriest grass-eaters sought refuge from the blaze outside, the cool air felt startlingly luxurious. Ahead, a massive dairy cow lay comfortably on its bedding. Its hide carried a soft pink hue, like that of a heifer expecting a calf, and bold black markings curled around its ears and forehead, resembling a scarf. 4 glossy black hooves peeked from beneath its belly. Its nose was wet and shiny, and its udder was a creamy white. The cow lifted its head, dark eyes studying Owen and Yimu with polite curiosity. After all, it was neither feeding nor milking time. Owen stood by the pasture gate, phone in hand, as Uncle Yimu leaned against the fence rail. The late summer sun cast long shadows over the grazing milk tanks, and Yimu cleared his throat. Milk production in these creatures isn't just about the quality of the grass or their physical strength, he began. Mood and season play a huge role, too. In spring, their milk leans toward a sweet, delicate flavor. In summer, he gestured around them at the thick stalks of newly grown forage. The milk grows richer and more full-bodied. Come autumn, it turns slightly tart, and in winter, it warms you from the inside out. Owen tapped record on his phone. Every detail mattered if he was going to raise milk tanks properly, and from the look in Yimu's eye, the old breeder was already sizing him up as a buyer. It made Owen's chest tighten. He'd insisted on taking the gym challenge himself, but now he suspected Uncle Moo had been planning this all along. If your forages stay this lush, Yimu continued, your milk tanks will have no trouble filling their udders. But remember, if they're stressed or unhappy, their output can drop off dramatically. Treat them roughly and you'll feel it in your milk quotas. Owen nodded, shutting off his phone. He'd spent months replanting these fields. He wouldn't let a single beast suffer on his watch. As he followed Yimu back toward the barn, Owen felt something like gratitude stir inside him. Beneath that tall, weathered exterior lay a careful, considerate breeder, one who'd taken the time to teach him everything he knew. And Owen was determined to repay that kindness, one perfectly happy milk tank at a time. Only when the cows are in a good mood will they give milk willingly. Wah. Yimu reminded Owen as they stepped through the barn's entrance. Owen nodded, lifting his phone to show he'd taken notes. Right, 300,000 yuan per cow. How many should I get? Yimu halted and thought for a moment. 3, if you can manage it. Owen hesitated. He had about 800,000 yuan left from the past 3 days' sales at his breeding house. He still needed to clear more of the plantation and build a proper cowshed. 3 cows would stretch his resources, but he wasn't about to back down now. All right, 3, he said. Good call. 3 is the absolute maximum your land can sustain at the moment, Yimu agreed with a nod. Follow me. As they wound deeper into the barn, Owen felt the weight lift from his shoulders. He'd been anxious about returning empty-handed. Now at least, he knew he'd secured his first herd. They arrived at a pen where a line of younger milk cows clustered. Compared to the mature cows they'd seen earlier, these heifers were smaller but far more alert, their dark eyes bright and curious. At the newcomers' approach, they stood and watched silently, clearly intrigued by their visitors. Owen allowed himself a small smile. He was one step closer to making this plantation a success. Chapter X, Choosing the Moo Tanks. Yimu gestured toward a spacious pen where a dozen plump-horned creatures grazed lazily. These are our 1-year-old milk tanks. They haven't started lactating yet, but with proper training, they'll produce top-quality milk once they mature. Now, pick 3. Owen stepped forward, surveying the herd with a discerning eye. Each milk tank resembled an oversized calf, its hide glossy and well-rounded. As he watched, several of them lifted their heads and sniffed the air, their wide eyes meeting his gaze. Moo tanks? Owen echoed, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. One of the creatures responded with a deep, rhythmic moo that sent a pleasant vibration through the pen's wooden floor. It was as though it were issuing a polite invitation. Very well, Owen said, nodding once. He lifted his gauntleted hand, and a translucent panel appeared in midair, displaying each tank's stats. Entity, Moo Tank 3, gender, female. Traits, plump build, soft coat, herbivorous. Rarity, blue, purple, purple. Level range, 21 and 24, 22, 24, 25 to 27. Skills, charge, roar, inflate, roll, milk extraction. Affection, 15, 20, 30. Satisfaction, 30, 30, 40. Owen tapped the check marks next to the 3 highest quality entries and confirmed his choice. The information panel flickered out, and the selected milk tanks approached him eagerly. Yimu's eyes widened in astonishment. Impressive, he murmured. Those 3 are the cream of the crop, especially that level 25 to 27 purple-grade tank. I bred her myself as one of our top specimens. I never imagined you'd pick the best of the best right off the bat. Owen shrugged casually, guiding the milk tanks toward the pen gate. I only settle for prime stock. Yimu watched him with growing respect. You've got a sharp eye, truly the instincts of a born beastmaster. The milk tanks followed Owen obediently, their soft moos trailing behind them like a chorus. With their new master in tow, they seemed eager to begin their journey, and ready to produce the richest milk the region had ever known. Ahem. Owen cleared his throat, cheeks flushing with a bit of embarrassment. Still, Yimu had said he was free to choose, so of course Owen would pick the best option. He'd learned by now that only the bold got ahead, any sign of timidity, and you just ended up getting walked over. Don't worry, Yimu said calmly. You just need to persuade them to come with you. Without another word, Owen reached into his storage orb and pulled out several tufts of silvery green grass, herbs he'd harvested from the plantation while collecting mienses. This particular strain was only the second type he'd ever successfully cultivated, and its value was well known. Carefully, he knelt before Yimu and laid them out like an offering. It's rare and potent, he explained. With these, I can guarantee they'll take you seriously and agree to travel together. He met Yimu's gaze with quiet confidence. If he played his cards right, there was no reason they'd refuse. Chapter 47, Moo? Fresh grass sprang up around Owen, but instead of offering it directly to the nearby mill tanks, he reached into his storage sphere and withdrew a small bottle of fragrant perfume. With a few gentle sprays, the plain E-rank grass instantly transformed into C-rank fragrant grass. Enhanced by a few drops of perfume, its aroma becomes intensely appealing. Cooking effect increases herbivorous Pokemon's temptation by 30%. Moo! The moment that rich scent filled the air, 3 Miltanks nearest to Owen brightened at once, their big eyes shining with anticipation. Encouragingly, Owen called out, "Come on over. This grass is for you." One of the massive Miltanks lumbered forward, pressing its muzzle eagerly against the blades in his hand. Owen held the fragrant grass steadily, letting it feed while the others edged closer, snorting softly for a turn. When they finished, and still seemed hungry, Owen exchanged a smirk with Yimu, who had been watching the scene unfold. Yimu couldn't help but grin. "This is the simplest challenge I could have given you," he teased. Owen chuckled as he reached for another handful of the perfumed grass. Simple or not, it's still effective. Owen swallowed hard and retrieved 3 Pokeballs from his belt. With a quick flick of his thumb, he recalled the 3 massive Miltanks he'd just purchased. Embarrassed, he cleared his throat. "Mr. Moo, I only have 850,000 now. Could you give me a few more days? I'll send another grass shipment to cover the rest of my debt." Mr. Moo chuckled, shaking his head. "Don't worry about it. I'm actually more curious about your special grass than the money. Next time you come by, just bring me some of those seeds. I want to study them." Relief flooded Owen's chest. "Thank you. I'll bring them myself." After handing over the payment, Owen stepped back and let out a long exhale. In just 3 days, he'd managed to earn, then immediately spend, nearly $1 million. He'd thought himself flush with cash. Now he was back to square one. His thoughts flicked to the battle Mr. Moo had mentioned earlier that morning. As he opened his mouth to ask about it, Mr. Moo cut him off. "All right," Mr. Moo said, folding his arms. "There's one more battle. Consider it my personal test. Back then, your father really impressed me with his Pokemon training. He just told me, send out your strongest Pokemon and spar with it. No holds barred." Owen nodded. A test from the elders to the younger generation, no doubt, and of course he would answer with his best. But ever since stepping into this world, he'd never actually seen a full-fledged gym trainer in action. "Follow me," Yimu said, leading Owen out to the grassy field beside the fence. "This is our battlefield. Go ahead, release your Pokemon." Yimu tapped the Pokeball in his hand. In a flash of light, a Bayleaf appeared, its vibrant leaves gleaming in the sun. Pokemon Bayleaf. Gender, male appearance, lush, healthy foliage. Qualification, purple individual values, HP 24, attack 23, special attack 24, defense 27, special defense 24, speed 22. Estimated level 23-26. Moves, tackle, leer, leaf blade, poison powder, vine whip, synthesis, magical leaf, leech seed. Reflect a mid-elite Pokemon like that was more than most new trainers could hope to command. Clearly, Yimu meant to test Owen, and he was doing it in earnest. Owen wasted no time on pleasantries. "Melodic, you're up." Melodic's silvery skin glittered in the sunlight. Though it was a water type, far more at home in the waves, it could hold its own on land for a short while. Not as graceful as underwater, but more than capable. Yimu blinked in surprise. A mianxiao? I haven't seen one in Wutong City for years. You bred this out of an ugliest, didn't you? Owen nodded. Beauty scales did the trick. Yimu shook her head, impressed. No run-of-the-mill beauty scales could produce such a flawless mianxiao. Its coloration is the finest I've ever seen. I'd say your breeding skills have outstripped your father's. En merely smiled. He turned back to the battle and called, Bayleaf, use Leaf Blade. Wait, Yimu cautioned. In a fight between Pokémon lacking in speed and raw power, energy output and type matchups can make all the difference. Mianxiao was more potent than Bayleaf, but this was Owen's first time deploying it in battle, and he wasn't about to risk his prized creation. He opted for a solid defense. Bayleaf bristled, leaves rustling around its neck like a spiked collar. With a sudden shake of its head, it sent dozens of razor-sharp blades of leaf energy hurtling toward Mianxiao in a sweeping, relentless assault. Before the leaf blades could reach Mianxiao, a shimmering white barrier had already formed around her. The razor-sharp blades struck the light screen without so much as a quiver. Instinctively, Owen called out, Mianxiao, use Dragon Pulse. In an instant, a concentrated beam of pure silvery energy coalesced at Mianxiao's paws. It blasted forth like a rushing wave of light, catching Bayleaf completely off guard. The attack hit with brutal force, sending Bayleaf sprawling unconscious to the ground in a single strike. Owen's eyes went wide. He'd never seen Melodic battle before, and to witness a mid-tier Elite Four Bayleaf toppled so decisively was nothing short of astonishing. That was incredible, he breathed. Mianxiao peered anxiously at the fallen Bayleaf, then looked back at Owen, ears drooping and head bowed in a mixture of relief and uncertainty. You. Her voice trembled as tears filled her eyes. It's okay, Owen said gently, slipping an arm around her shoulders. Then he turned to Yimu. How is Bayleaf? Yimu's expression darkened as he knelt beside the fallen Pokémon. He shook his head. She'll be fine. Every Pokémon needs to learn to take a hit before they can fight back. Honestly, Yimu had already suspected Bayleaf wouldn't stand a chance against that Melodic. The sea serpent's scales shimmered like polished pearl, and its aura buzzed just below Gym Leader's strength. Still, he hadn't expected a single hydro pump to knock her out before she even had a chance to react. Well, that's fighting your first battle. Brutal and humbling. He looked over at Owen and gave a small nod. Come here. Reaching into his storage orb, Yimu withdrew a wooden pail of creamy white moo milk. This is fresh from my top herd. It's packed with nutrients, just what a young Pokémon needs after its first taste of real combat. He held it out, offering a comforting smile. Let's get her back on her feet. Chapter 48, A-Level Moo Fresh Milk. Rich milk drawn from a king-grade moo creamery, teeming with nutrients. Long-term consumption by newly hatched Pokémon boosts their resistance to unusual conditions. Owen carefully inspected the small carton in his hand. This was the moo fresh milk he'd retrieved from Yimu, and it wasn't just ordinary milk. It had earned an A-level rating. He couldn't help smiling. My father's friend really knows his stuff. Rather than head home, Owen took a cab straight to Dashihua Food Co. Ltd. He'd given them advance notice, so the security guards waved him through without a word. In the bright, glass-walled office, Chen Xiao looked up from his desk and beamed. Why did you come alone? I thought the delivery wasn't until tomorrow. Owen set the milk carton on the desk. I wanted to show you right away. Over the past weeks, the exotic fruits and vegetables Owen had sourced had turned Dashihua's supermarkets and market stalls into hotspots across Wutong City. The only problem was supply. The batches were too small to meet demand. If they could secure a steady stream of produce, plus this A-level milk, Owen was certain Dashihua could corner the entire local market and grow into a powerhouse in the city's food industry. Owen reached into his pack and pulled out a small, polished storage orb. I came to town on business today, he said with a friendly grin, and I thought you might like some of the fruits and vegetables I harvested. These watermelons are perfectly ripe. Uncle Chen, want to try one? Chen Xiao's eyes lit up immediately. Absolutely. If they're as good as you say, I'll buy every one you've got. They're guaranteed sweet, Owen assured him. He opened the orb and withdrew a plump, striped watermelon. Scanning the room, Owen realized there wasn't a single knife in sight. Do you happen to have something to cut it with? Chen Xiao stared at the melon for a moment, then a mischievous grin spread across his face. He balled his fist and, with a single, theatrical swing, smashed the watermelon against the wooden counter. In an instant, bright red flesh and juice splattered across both their faces, filling the air with its sweet aroma. Chen Xiao wasted no time. He tore off a piece, popped it into his mouth, and chewed thoughtfully. His eyes widened with delight. That's perfect, sweet, crisp, and not a bit mealy. I'll take this one at 51 coins per kilogram. How much can you harvest? Chen Xiao asked, eyeing the piled crates of produce. Owen wiped watermelon juice from his cheek and offered a sheepish grin. Roughly a few thousand kilograms. Watermelons, he'd discovered, yield far more fruit than most crops. Some of his melons weighed in north of 20 kilos each. Although he'd just finished stashing the first batch into his storage orb, he hadn't yet had the chance to taste one. Chen Xiao's eyes lit up as he handed over the fruits, vegetables, and payment. Owen, have you thought about expanding the farm? Your current output is still pretty small. If you're short on hands, I can ask my uncle to lend you a few people. Owen's heart skipped a beat. He'd been wrestling with exactly that idea. When he first set up his little orchard and vegetable plots, it was meant only as a stopgap measure. Now it was clear that produce alone wouldn't generate substantial income. In the past few days, he'd earned just over 80,000 yuan from fruits and vegetables, a far cry from the steady profits he could make selling energy cubes to Pokémon trainers. Owen paused, weighing his options. The real advantage of scaling up his operation was clear. By growing bigger, more robust fruits and vegetables, he could boost the cultivation hall next door, spread his reputation, and build a recognizable brand. But he couldn't do it alone. His other concern was the Jin Kela seeds. He now held close to 1,000 bags. If he sold them off, the resulting crops might not match the superior quality of his own produce, but they would still be far better than ordinary fruits and vegetables. Owen wasn't quite ready to decide yet. I'll give it some thought, Uncle Chen, he said at last, straightening in his chair. Actually, there's one more thing I'd like your help with. Chen Xiao's face flickered with mild disappointment, but he quickly masked it with a reassuring nod. Go ahead, Owen. Owen leaned forward. I've just bought several large milk canisters, and I'd like to expand the cowshed behind the plantation to make full use of them. Do you know anyone in the area who could handle that kind of construction? Chen Xiao waved his hand airily. Consider it done. I'll have a crew come out to your place first thing tomorrow morning. Owen didn't head home right after leaving the company. Instead, he swung by the Want supermarket to pick up a few groceries, then grabbed a Didi back to the breeding house. The front gate was already closed when he arrived. Once inside, he made his way straight to his room. Xiao Liwei was curled up on the bed, fast asleep. Only the green vine snake was missing. Owen set his bags down and slipped out to the plantation behind the house. Sure enough, there lay the green vine snake, its slender body coiled among the young fruit trees. It had apparently been using its special vine weave technique to weed the grass beds. Judging by the little milk puddle and its twitching tail, it must have dozed off after a snack. Teng teng, Owen called softly, brushing aside a stray vine. At the sound of his voice, the snake paused its slow movements and lifted its head in greeting. Good work, Owen murmured, offering the creature a quick nod. He took a moment to survey the grove. The fruit trees he'd planted just days ago had already shot up to nearly his own height. Even the dragonfire fruit tree by the reservoir looked robust, its broad leaves fanning out like a giant palm. Satisfied with their progress, he crouched down and gently guided his Pidgeot and Melodic back to their usual posts along the far edge of the plantation. With the guardians settled, Owen stood, picked up his sickle, and set to work cutting back the tall grass. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves overhead, dappling his path as he methodically cleared a tidy row. It felt good to be home, and to see his little grove flourishing so nicely under everyone's care. Owen paused at the edge of the meadow and called softly, Teng Teng? At his command, his partner, an emerald green vine snake, wove its tendrils into a makeshift handle around Owen's sickle. With a graceful flick, it sliced through the tall grass, whittling it down to even lengths. Owen crouched beside his friend and murmured, Just enough for Milk Tank's dumplings, okay? Don't overdo it. The vine snake gave a swift nod, then resumed its work. In under 2 minutes, Owen tapped its side. All set. Together, they gathered the freshly cut blades and headed back to the breeding house's kitchen. Their newly captured milk tank had been confined to its Pokeball for the past 2 days, the barn stall still under construction, and Owen was determined its first meal would be perfect. He spread the grass on the countertop and loaded it into a blender. With a few pulses, the leaves turned into a vibrant green puree. Owen strained the mixture through a fine sieve, collecting the pulp in one bowl and the emerald liquid in another. He measured 2 cups of pulp, added 1 cup of flour, then gradually poured in the juice until a soft, pliable dough formed. A spoonful of sugar and a pinch of powdered orchid blossom, his mother's secret touch, made the dough sweet and fragrant. Working quickly, Owen shaped the dough into plump dumplings, roughly the size of a baby's fist. He arranged them on the steaming rack, closed the lid, and waited. Within minutes, a gentle hiss filled the kitchen, and the sweet, grassy aroma of freshly cooked dumplings drifted out. Owen smiled. Milk Tank's first home-cooked meal was ready. Owen carefully opened the jar of A-level Moo fresh milk he'd brought back from Yemu. Even his massive Milk Tank companions could drink it, and the rich, restorative milk would quickly replenish their strength. Mixing the fresh milk with an assortment of herbs and grains, he set everything to simmer. About 30 minutes later, a dozen jade-green dumplings emerged from the steamer, each one exuding a gentle, milky aroma. These were A-plus grade grass dumplings, masterfully crafted treats that delivered 2 powerful effects. First, any grass-type Pokémon that ate one would see its skill power temporarily boosted. Second, when an herbivorous Pokémon consumed one, the milk it later produced would help clear minor status ailments, and with regular use, strengthen its resistance to them. Owen surveyed his handiwork with a satisfied nod. He placed 1 dumpling on his tongue and let the fresh, earthy sweetness wash over him. Turning to the coiled green vine snake at his feet, he held out another. The snake uncurled, took a careful bite, and let out a delighted hiss. "Perfect," Owen said, slipping a few dumplings into a small bowl. "Set those aside for Vulpix later." He gathered the remaining dumplings and strode out to the plantation. With a quick gesture, he summoned 3 of his big milk tanks. The enormous creatures lumbered forward, steam curling from their milk pails. Owen placed the bowl before them, and the trio immediately began to feast, their contented lowing echoing across the field. Owen knelt in front of the newly released Miltank, quietly holding his breath. The herd glanced around, their big eyes settling on him. One of them tilted its head and let out a questioning, "Moo." Owen offered a gentle nod, then carefully laid out a shallow bowl he'd filled with soft green pellets. "I'm sorry I haven't finished building your cowshed yet," he said softly. "Until it's ready, you'll have to stay inside your Pokeballs. But here, this is for you." The Miltank hesitated only a moment before lowering their heads and scarfing down the pellets. "Moo!" they cheered in unison, crunching happily. The sight made Owen smile, and a small ping from his internal system confirmed the change. Miltank pleasure value increased. With the herd now content, Owen let out a relieved breath. As he swept the last fallen pellet into the bowl, a new thought struck him. He needed to construct that cowshed right away. No more delays. His Miltank deserved a proper home. Chapter 49. The next morning, the scorching sun climbed steadily into the sky over the plantation. Uncle Chen was already on site before dawn, determined to push forward with the construction. Just as the first light touched the fields, several large trucks arrived, unloading beams, lumber, and corrugated steel sheets. Owen followed his blueprint to start building the new cowshed, hammering and measuring alongside the crew. By mid-morning, sweat streamed down everyone's faces. Owen jogged back to the farmhouse, returning moments later with trays of iced watermelon slices and packets of physical energy cubes. He called out to the laborers, "Thank you for your hard work, gentlemen. Please have some watermelon, and for you porters, here are the energy cubes." The team of 5 men, shirtless, muscular, and bronzed by days in the sun, paused their work. Each one had a fighting-type Pokémon at his side. A Machoke here, a Hitmonlee there. At the front stood their foreman, Huba, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with streaks of gray at his temples. All right, everyone, Huba bellowed, clapping his hands. Take a break. Owen's brought us snacks. The workers dropped their tools and gathered around as Owen set down the trays. Bright red watermelon glistened with ice, and the energy cubes lay neatly beside them. The men exchanged hungry glances and grinned, their muscles relaxing now that there was a moment to rest. Owen smiled back. He'd drawn up these plans himself, and seeing the cowshed taking shape and knowing his crew was well-fueled filled him with satisfaction. As they munched and chatted, the hot breeze rustled the tall grass, and the promise of a finished barn felt just a few strong beams away. One of the older farmhands picked up a slice of watermelon, bit into it, and nodded enthusiastically. I'm not exaggerating, Owen. Your plantation is the best I've seen in years. This watermelon tastes incredible. Owen smiled, gesturing toward the fruit. Help yourselves. Then he handed energy cubes to the Pokémon, who were still hard at work, and strolled toward the new cowshed to check on its progress. Nestled at the farthest corner of the plantation, just beyond the grass fields, the cowshed stood framed by freshly removed fencing. Owen had mirrored the design of the large dairy farm, a low, sloping greenhouse roof for shade, plastic curtains along the sides, and a compact air conditioner inside. It was smaller in scale, built to accommodate 10 large milk tanks at most, but otherwise identical in function. Behind the cowshed lay a broad, flat stretch of land, dotted with a few trees and stubborn weeds. Owen planned to clear it all, then set his sandshrew to till the soil and sow grass seed. Before long, the cows would have plenty of room to graze and roam in comfort. With the help of a few battling Pokémon, Owen was sure the new cowshed would be finished within a day or two. He was still lost in that thought when a soft, sticky little sound drifted in from outside the plantation. Yeen, yeen, yeen? A green vine snake slithered into the clearing, closely followed by a newborn Vulpix. The cub, freshly hatched and brimming with curiosity, tapped its snow-white paws against the ground. When it grew restless, it scampered over to Owen and rubbed against his calves, sending a delightful chill through him. Tang tang! The vine snake chirped eagerly, as if asking, Want to play? Owen chuckled and knelt down, scooping the Vulpix into his arms. The moment their eyes met, the cub's sensitive side was exposed. It let out a series of plaintive whimpers, its pure white fur quivering with each shiver. Yeen, yeen, please stop. Hey, Owen teased, nuzzling the soft fluff beneath the Vulpix's chin. I just want a little fun. He couldn't help but smile. There was something irresistibly charming about a newly hatched Pokémon. Owen scooped the quivering ice Vulpix into his arms and carried him down to the reservoir, gently rinsing the mud from each tiny paw. Look at these, completely caked in dirt, he teased. You've got to learn to oat your paws with ice energy so they stay clean, all right? Otherwise, I won't go so easy on you next time. Ice Vulpix let out a soft whimper. Why, I don't understand. Owen laughed and tousled the little fox's fur. All right, you're still too young. We'll work on it later. He finished washing the cub, then offered him a small bowl of moo-moo milk, a special blend of A-rank and regular milk, to help him regain his strength. No sooner had Ice Vulpix gulped it down than his eyelids began to droop. Cradling the sleepy pup, Owen carried him back to the breeding house and tucked him into a cozy stall. Leaving the breeding area, Owen picked up an iron bucket and strode out to the pasture. He retrieved several Miltanks from their Pokeballs and called out, Moo? The Miltanks heard the clatter of the bucket and immediately understood. Though it was their first official milking session, generations of farm breeding had given them an almost instinctive knowledge of the routine. They ambled forward in a neat line, ready to cooperate. Owen cleared his throat and stepped forward, heart pounding as he faced the 3 young Miltanks. This was his first time milking, and he couldn't shake a sudden wave of self-consciousness. He shifted uncomfortably and offered a tentative smile. This is my first time doing this. If I'm pressing too hard or not hard enough, just let me know, okay? The Miltanks gathered around him, lowing softly. Their calm, encouraging moos seemed to say, Don't worry, this is exactly why we grow this milk. After all, their rich milk was meant to be collected, to feed Pokémon babies or to store for later. Gentle by nature, they trusted their trainers to handle them carefully, especially when they were well treated and fed delicious snacks in return. Encouraged by their easy acceptance, Owen relaxed his shoulders and offered a brighter grin. "Thanks, guys," he murmured, rolling up his sleeves. As he began, he realized it wasn't nearly as daunting as he'd feared. With every soft moo of reassurance, his confidence grew, and so did his gratitude for these generous, patient Pokémon. Chapter 50 C-Grade Moo Moo Milk is drawn from elite stage Miltanks. While it isn't as nutrient-dense as A-grade milk, long-term consumption still boosts a young Pokémon's physical strength and supplies most of the vitamins and proteins they need to grow. Because these three Miltanks had only just reached the elite tier, their milk qualified as C-grade, but the yield was impressive. Each cow filled half of Owen's iron bucket, and he'd estimated its capacity at around 14 liters. Between the three of them, he now had 21 liters of fresh Moo Moo milk. Owen set aside a portion of this batch to blend with higher-grade milk. He planned to use the mixture to bake yogurt, cakes, and other treats for his team. The remainder would go on sale in his shop. Standing in the barn, he offered the cows a plate of green dumplings he'd prepared that morning, one by one, until each of their happiness meters registered above 70. Satisfied, he coaxed them back into their Pokeballs and wiped his hands on his trousers. With the cows cared for and stowed away, Owen returned to the steaming buckets. He let the warm milk cool to just the right temperature, then began portioning it for future recipes, and for customers who'd come looking for a wholesome, nutrient-rich drink. Owen carried the pail of fresh Moo Moo milk into the training hall and, setting it carefully on the counter. He split it in two. Half went into a cooler in the back, while the other half stayed in the hall. Almost at once, the sweet, creamy aroma of summer fresh milk drifted through the room, and a handful of trainers lingering around the tables looked up in curiosity. "Brother Owen, what's that?" one of them asked, pointing at the pail. "Is this a new product?" Owen smiled and nodded. "Exactly. We're planning to introduce this Moo Moo milk in the store once it earns its official rating. Today's batch is the very first we're offering for sampling." He strolled to the counter and retrieved a large glass dispenser he'd cleaned the day before. A small spigot at its base gleamed in the afternoon light. Carefully, Owen poured the milk into it until it was full. Turning to his assistant, Chin Shu, he said, "Starting now, any trainer who's bought energy cubes today can fill up to 200 milliliters of Moo Moo milk for free. Please be fair. Remember there are people waiting behind you." "Got it?" Chin Shu nodded and took her place behind the counter, ready to guide the trainees through their first taste of the rich, milky treat. And as word of the free samples spread, a small line began to form, each person eager to try the famed Moo Moo milk for themselves. Owen's new job at the breeding house paid 10,000 credits a month and came with a half-day off each week. That combination had him grinning from ear to ear, so eager on the job that he hardly had time left to train his own Pokémon. When word got around that fresh milk was now complimentary for anyone who bought energy cubes, the customers couldn't believe it. "No way, they're just giving it away?" Regulars who had already spotted Owen hauling pails of milk lit up at the news. One of them, a young man scrolling through his Pokénav while clutching a selfie stick, hurried over to the counter. "Hey, I'm here every day for energy cubes," he panted. "You know me, right? I've got this empty mineral water bottle. Could you top it up?" He downed the last drop, tossed the bottle onto the counter, and waited. Owen reached for a clean, disposable cup, estimated that 2 cupfuls, about 200 milliliters, would fill it, then poured the fresh milk straight into the bottle. He snapped the cap back on and handed it over. "Perfect," the trainer said, twisting off the cap again and inhaling the sweet aroma. "Thanks, man." The rich aroma convinced Owen, a veteran of countless store raids, that this was nothing less than C-grade Moo Moo fresh milk. "Holy, C-grade Moo Moo fresh milk? You're giving this away?" Luan Ming gaped in disbelief. He knew better than anyone how expensive Moo Moo fresh milk could be. Even the lowest D grade sells for 3 to 500 yuan per 500 milliliters, depending on the season. When his Snorlax was born, he'd spent 350,000 yuan just to feed it C-grade milk for a week, hoping to give it every advantage. Owen smiled. "This is our first batch, so the quality will only get better. Besides, our breeding house just opened. Anyone who comes out this far deserves a little extra. We'll have more products and special services rolling out soon. He didn't have much experience in business or marketing. He was just trying to treat his customers right. But if this generous offering was any indication, Owen's breeding house was off to a promising start. Luan Ming knew exactly what he was doing. By making people feel they're getting a bargain, they'll never forget who gave it to them. He lifted his selfie stick, beaming at the camera. Welcome back, everyone. This is the breeding house I visit every single day, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Don't let its out-of-the-way location fool you, whether it's the quality of the energy cubes, the prices, or even how good-looking the shopkeeper is. Everything here is top-notch. Come on, little brother. Say hello to the viewers, he called, swinging the camera until it captured both himself and Owen standing behind the counter. Owen froze for a moment. Then, spotting the thousands of viewers already tuned into the live stream, he straightened his posture and forced a warm smile. Hello everyone. I'm Owen, owner and breeder here at the neighboring breeding house. He'd seen Luan Ming around before, of course. This streamer showed up every day with his phone in hand, but he'd never realized just how many fans the guy had amassed. In the corner of the screen, the viewer count was surging past 4,000, the comments scrolling too fast to read. And judging by how fresh-faced Luan Ming looked, Owen couldn't help but wonder if the streamer was even old enough to drive. Yet the energy he brought to each broadcast was impossible to ignore, and, he admitted, it was kind of nice having someone this enthusiastic praising his shop. Owen leaned back in his chair, scanning the rapid-fire comments flooding his live stream. He's kinda handsome, one viewer typed. Handsome boy. Did he really refuse to pay Master Luan? Another asked. I heard he's giving away C-rank Moo Moo milk for free. So generous. Are those energy blocks he sells really that powerful? Wait, what's that white shape behind him? A Alolan Vulpix. It's here. It just leaped into his arms. Look at that pink tongue. My heart can't take the cuteness. At that moment, the tiny Vulpix, who'd just woken from its nap, trotted out of the nursery room and into the adjacent breeding area. Its 6 fluffy tails wagged furiously the second it spotted Owen. Newly hatched Pokémon were like this, bursts of playfulness punctuated by quick naps, every movement brimming with life. In just a week or so, that boundless energy would settle down as the cub matured, but for now, it was pure exuberance. With a soft laugh, Owen scooped the little Vulpix into his arms. He straightened up and glanced at the livestream again. The chat had shifted focus entirely. Is this Wutong City? I heard there's a grass-type gym here. I was planning to head straight to Changsha, but now I've got to see the Six Tails Ice Boss in action. Anyone forming a group? Count me in. Let's team up. Right upstairs. Owen's lips curved into a grin. It looked like Wutong City, and its legendary ice-type gym leader was about to get a whole lot busier. Owen stared down at the little ice Vulpix as it nuzzled against his forearm, confusion flickering across his face. He'd only meant to take a quick look. He hadn't even advertised his visit. And yet here was this adorable creature, practically insisting on his attention. I hadn't planned on coming all the way out here, he admitted to himself, voice barely above a whisper. But this little guy is just too cute to ignore. Huh? Owen blinked, his icy blue eyes widening in surprise as the Vulpix pressed itself against him, its small, oft, crystalline fur brushing along his sleeve. The cub chirped happily, its 9 tails swishing in delight. What the ice Vulpix didn't realize was that at this very moment, thousands of spectators were watching every move on the live feed, completely smitten by the unexpected encounter between a lonely trainer and an irresistibly charming Pokémon. Chapter 51. All right, I'll play with you soon. Just be quiet for now. Owen gently pinched the little Vulpix's nose, halting its energetic wriggling in his arms. The foxlet let out 2 soft, plaintive cries before settling down, tiny paws clutching his shirt. Unbeknownst to Owen, the Vulpix's adorable antics had sent a ripple of excitement through the livestream chat. Emojis and heart reactions flooded the screen, viewers cooing over the creature's every move. Beside him, Luan Ming muttered, "These viewers are really just after good looks," then picked up his phone. With a grin, he pivoted the camera to the QR code Owen had taped by the counter. Oh, and Owen here has a Douyin account. Everyone, go ahead and give him a follow. He'll be posting updates there too. Owen had thoughtfully placed that QR code at his shop's entrance, hoping to funnel passing customers to his new channel. Now, as the followed notifications began to pop up in the corner of the stream, he opened his mouth to say thanks, when a fresh comment caught his eye. Wutong Town? Owen paused at the edge of the plantation, a sudden sense of familiarity washing over him. Just then, a new message scrolled across the livestream chat. By the way, I heard someone spotted a Gardevoir in these woods, and it was a different color. Don't know if it's true, though. Talk of a rare, possibly shiny Gardevoir immediately ignited the viewers. Comments flew by. Impossible. Wutong Town's forest was searched 10 years ago. Any Gardevoir would have been found or chased off back then. A Gardevoir? Seriously? Probably just bragging, my friend, always making things up. Ugh, I was really hoping for a sighting. Is this rumor even real? As he read the chat feed, Owen felt a flicker of disappointment. He'd been secretly dreaming of encountering that psychic Pokémon, but it looked like nothing more than idle chatter. He typed a quick, "Thanks for watching," to his regulars, then gently set the ice-blue Vulpix cradled in his arms onto the soft grass. Around him, the new cowshed rose steadily into shape, and nearby, Melodic glided over the fields, coaxing gentle rain from the clouds to nourish their crops. Owen took a deep breath, shook off his letdown, and turned back to oversee the day's work on the plantation. Dark clouds gathered over the plantation, and a soft drizzle soon followed. The damp soil and leaves released a fresh, earthy fragrance, while a gentle coolness settled over the fields. When the rain eased, the green vine serpent slid into the grass field, channeling its power to accelerate the growth of the young crops. Ever since it had eaten those herb dumplings yesterday, its mastery of the grass field had improved dramatically. Owen could plainly see the field's aura spreading farther than before. He made a mental note to prepare more dumplings. The more the serpent ate, the stronger its buff would become. High above, Pidgeot perched on a sturdy branch, its keen eyes scanning the perimeter for any sign of trouble. Owen surveyed the flourishing scene below and let out a contented sigh. "This is incredible," he murmured. He glanced up at Pidgeot, remembering the promise he had made, to train the majestic bird until it was stronger than ever and help it reclaim everything its kind had lost. In return, Pidgeot had stood guard over the farm with unwavering loyalty. Owen was determined to keep his word. After all, of all his Pokémon, only Pidgeot could truly take to the skies. Soon, once they were both ready, he would climb onto Pidgeot's back and soar through the clouds. Just the two of them, free on the wind. I whistled sharply. "Pidgeot!" At the sound of Owen's call, Pidgeot spread its broad wings, dove gracefully, and settled lightly on his shoulder. Its powerful frame was evident in every feather, fiery reds and deep oranges fanning out into an impressive tail, a regal crest crowning its head, and talons and beak honed to lethal precision. Owen ran a hand along Pidgeot's plumage. "You've grown stronger," he murmured. Pidgeot ruffled its feathers and bobbed its head, as if to confirm that all was well. Then, with a gentle nudge, it seemed to remind Owen of their next step. "No more magic candies," he told it. "It's time to train for real." Among trainers, there's a saying, "A Pokémon can be raised in luxury, but only in battle will it become truly powerful." Like a greenhouse flower, a sheltered Pokémon may bloom beautifully, until the fierce winds and rains of combat reveal its frailty. Pidgeot's eyes gleamed. Ready for action, it shifted its stance on Owen's shoulder, eagerly awaiting the test. Finally, its trainer was going to put its strength to the challenge. Owen took a steady breath and nodded. "All right," he said, urging his Pidgeot forward. Together they walked to the far side of the half-finished cowshed, where piles of weeds and saplings had sprouted in the loose earth. Owen surveyed the mess and fell into thought. Which of Pidgeot's moves would be best to clear this area? Green dumplings were known to boost grass-type Pokemon's skill power and comprehension, but Pidgeot was a flying type. Still, a recipe wasn't just grass. It was made from grass, moo milk, flour, and that special powdery perfume. If he swapped out the grass or tweaked those key ingredients, maybe he could cook up a dumpling that bolstered flying-type moves, or even one that enhanced all stats. Owen crouched, brushing a stray shoot aside. He needed to experiment. If he could isolate the effects of the moo milk and perfume, he could develop new training treats for Pidgeot, and perhaps for future Pokémon too. Before he could start testing recipes, however, he wanted to make sure Pidgeot was in top form. 2 rare candies later, and his partner had already advanced to elite status. Pidgeot, gender, male. Characteristic, keen eyes. Qualification, blue individual values. HP, 21. Attack, 21. Special attack, 20. Defense, 17. Special defense, 17. Speed, 25. Level range, 21 to 24. Moves, Gust, Wing Attack, Quick Attack, Peck, Air Slash, Steel Wing, Hurricane, Twister, Clear Smog. Friendship, 87. Very trusting. Motivation, 70. Eager to grow stronger. Now, with Pidgeot ready for anything, Owen turned to his research notes. It was time to see if a simple change in ingredients could open up a whole new world of training dishes that might someday help any Pokémon, regardless of type, reach their full potential. Owen carefully examined the new skill disc he'd just earned for clearing the battlefield fog. The disc glowed with an airy blue light and taught the move Fierce Storm. The challenge now was to see if Pidgeot could not only unleash a single storm, but stack one fierce storm inside another. Pidgeot cocked its head at him, feathers ruffling in curiosity. Owen had decided to adapt the Green Vine Snake's Green Grass Mixer training method to wind energy control, hoping that the same principles could guide Pidgeot's mastery of air rather than grass. "All right," Owen said, "give it a try, but keep your storm a bit tighter in range." With a confident nod, Pidgeot launched itself skyward and began to beat its wings in quick, powerful strokes. A shrieking gale whipped through the clearing, tearing at branches and scattering leaves. The first fierce storm formed beautifully, a concentrated whirlwind of razor winds. Encouraged, Pidgeot dove again to ignite the second storm inside the first. But instead of intensifying, the 2 winds clashed. Their currents canceled each other out, dissolving into a mere puff of air. Pidgeot hovered, crestfallen, its wings drooping as it peered down at Owen with wide, apologetic eyes. Clearly, it didn't yet have the finesse to weave one storm into another. Owen landed beneath his partner and gave the bird a reassuring pat on the chest. "Don't worry. We'll work on it step by step. No rush." But even as he spoke, his mind churned. Maybe it was time to try another one of his cooking-boosted training aids after all. Chapter 52. Twilight drifted in like a soft veil, bathing the town in a warm orange glow. High above, a golden silhouette cut through the sunset sky. Its wings beat wearily as it glided toward a stand of tall pines, finally settling on a sturdy branch. There, the bird preened its feathers with precise, methodical strokes, yet its eyes held a quiet loneliness. In the past day, Pidgeot had struggled to master the technique Owen, the trainer, called Gale Storm Stacked. After 24 hours of practice, it had completed only a single sweep across the training field. Still, Pidgeot never doubted the method's promise. In just a few days within this sanctuary, it had already felt its strength multiply, perhaps 4, even 10 times over. And it wasn't the only one thriving here. Below, Melodic drifted through crystalline water, each graceful stroke sending ripples across the pond. Nearby, Ivy Serpent coiled through an emerald meadow that grew broader with every passing hour. The vibrant grass crackled with concentrated energy. Watching them, Pidgeot couldn't help thinking, their mastery of energy was astonishing. Could it really be so bad, then, that it lagged behind? After all, Pidgeot prided itself on being the first of its kind ever to learn Gale Storm. If anyone could catch up and surpass its own expectations, it was itself. With renewed determination shining in its eyes, Pidgeot stretched its wings and prepared to try again. The afternoon sun painted Melodic's lithe form in soft, dreamlike hues as her reflection rippled across the pool's surface. Though the basin was barely large enough for her, she glided serenely through the water, surfacing now and then to peer toward the breeding house. Nearby, Pidgeot glanced away, shaking her head to dispel a touch of envy. With renewed purpose, she resumed her watch, scanning the perimeter for any Rattata that might infiltrate the plantation. Inside the breeding house, Owen sat at a wooden workbench, studying the energy block in his hand. A small plaque beside it read, "Name, A-rank Sandscale energy block. Ingredients, Sandscale. Fruit, Moo Moo milk. Pink fragrance perfume. Effects, temporarily heightens a flying-type Pokemon's ability to learn new moves. With long-term use, significantly boosts speed, individual values, and strengthens feather resilience." Owen tapped the block thoughtfully. He had spent the entire day in the kitchen, 24 hours of experimenting, testing recipe after recipe. By now, he'd lost track of exactly how many energy blocks he'd produced or how many dishes he'd perfected. Yet each new creation brought fresh insights, and he was more determined than ever to push his culinary and Pokémon training skills even further. Owen spread his haul of special reward ingredients across the work table: exotic tree fruits, rare plantation produce, and other curiosities. His goal was simple, but ambitious: turn these items into energy blocks that could sharpen a flying-type Pokémon's battle instincts. He started by experimenting with a fiery Roma tomato fruit and a generous pour of moo milk. The result was a spicy tomato milk salad that, when eaten, temporarily supercharged any fire-type move. Next, he crushed scale fruits into the same rich milk, refining them into high-grade milky energy blocks. These not only bolstered a Pokémon's resistance to status ailments, but also raised its special attack IV. Most of Owen's creations were designed as energy blocks, since they keep far longer than fresh dishes. A handful became meals, either for Owen himself or for his Vulpix and Superior to sample. He meticulously recorded every recipe, every measured reaction, and every battle report in his ever-expanding notebook. "Maybe I should start raising Pokémon that can produce my ingredients," he mused, picturing fields of berry trees tended by gentle grass types. By the end of the day's trials, and with the undeniable boost provided by an A-rank batch of moo milk, Owen felt a surge of inspiration. His cooking talent, when paired with the right ingredients, could yield truly extraordinary effects, and he was only just getting started. Owen sat back and let the possibilities whirl through his mind. If moo milk could elevate any dish, then what wonders might he achieve with even more exotic ingredients? He pictured himself gathering goat milk from the snowy slopes of Mount Lamb, harvesting pure rock salt from saltstone giant caverns, bottling the heady perfume of aromatisse, whipping up the silkiest cream from Alchemy's frost milk, or pressing golden oil from Oliva's olives. The sheer variety was dizzying and thrilling. "Xiang," Owen said, turning to his partner at his side. "There's that special breeding facility in Wutong City. We should pay it a visit soon, but Saltstone Giant and Oliva hail from the Paldea region. That's going to be a tougher assignment." He frowned. Paldea lay shrouded in a unique magnetic field that interfered with long-distance communications, leaving the region all but cut off from the rest of the Allied territories. Without an official branch there, he would have to venture in person if he wanted to recruit those Pokémon and secure their rare ingredients. Owen exhaled heavily, a pang of frustration tugging at his chest. To know these culinary treasures existed, but not yet be able to claim them, felt like looking at a feast through a window. He ran a hand through his hair and squared his shoulders. "One day," he whispered, determination kindling in his voice, "I'll bring every one of them here." Owen climbed the hill at dawn, sand-scale energy cubes in hand. He'd sent his Pidgeot out earlier to clear the overgrown weeds and hone its aerial skills, instructing the bird to return as soon as it grew tired. Now he wondered if it had come back. As he neared the old pine grove, he spotted Pidgeot circling overhead, wings beating in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Owen hesitated. With Pidgeot's steadfast nature, it might perch there all night, guarding the tree instead of resting. Pokémon had impressive endurance, no doubt, but who really had energy for a full night's watch? He waved. "Come here, Pidgeot." "Pidgeot!" The cry sliced through the morning air. Within moments, the majestic bird alighted beside him. Its head dipped in greeting, but its drooping wings and heavy breath left no doubt. It had just finished an intense training session. Owen smiled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Hard at work, huh?" Pidgeot let out an emphatic squawk, its way of saying yes, before settling gracefully on the soft earth, ready for whatever came next. Owen pressed a hand to his forehead. "You." He wanted to say more, but the fire burning in Pippabird's eyes stole his words. He knew how painful it must be to leave home, to carry nothing but anger. Hatred, after all, was the most primal force in any living thing. He stood in silence for a long moment, then spoke softly. "Do your best. Don't lose hope. I'll help you." He reached into his pack and pulled out a single sand-scale energy cube, his finest creation after an afternoon of careful refinement. "Here, this is for you." "Bibby!" Pippabird's mournful stare brightened at the sight of the cube. With keen interest, it tore the block into pieces and swallowed them eagerly. Almost immediately, a surge of energy rippled through its body. The Pokémon beat its wings and shot into the sky, as if to unleash a tempest across the plantation. But then, just before letting loose its full power, Pippa-bird spotted Owen below. Its wings stilled, and the fierce glow in its eyes softened. It hovered for a heartbeat, then veered away from the crops. Gathering itself, it flapped its steel-hard wings once more. A gust like an explosion roared beneath it, spiraling into a small but violent storm that danced across the fields. Congratulations, trainer. You've raised Pidgeot's happiness from 10% to 98%. As a reward, you receive 15 packs of golden Kella berries, 3 magical candies, and Flamebird's divine feather, a fiery plume condensed from Flamebird's energy that, when absorbed, enhances the stats of flying and fire-type Pock. From below, Owen let out a relieved smile as he watched the notice appear. There we go. Now he won't be so anxious. Chapter 53, July 28th. Today was the first full day our breeding house was up and running, and only the second since Pidgeot absorbed Moltres' divine feathers. Maybe it was the glowing recommendation from that senior trainer a few days back, but business has picked up noticeably. More customers are stopping by, and their Pokémon are generally stronger than before, which means I'm earning richer rewards, sometimes even rare tree fruits. At the same time, a curious rumor has spread like wildfire. Hey, are you heading to Wutong Forest to find Gardevoir? No way. You too? That's crazy. I'm going too. Well then, we're rivals. Fine, let's battle. Winner gets the Gardevoir. Snippets of conversations like that float around my breeding house all day. Someone's clearly planted this story to lure trainers into Wutong Forest on a wild Gardevoir hunt. I watch a middle-aged man fumble for Pokédollars to buy a physical energy cube at the counter and wonder who started the whole thing, and what they really hope to gain. Wutong Forest was first opened for development 10 years ago. Since then, it's earned a reputation for strange Pokémon sightings and hidden treasures, and now, apparently, for a Gardevoir waiting to be claimed. According to the system's latest survey, Beedrill and Spearow dominated the region in numbers. In the central meadow, where wildflowers stretched as far as the eye could see, Beedrill swarmed so densely that they practically choked out every other Pokémon. Trainers nowadays were really stepping up their game. Could the rumors of exceptionally strong wild Pokémon be true after all? Owen glanced at the prompt blinking on his wrist device. A Gardevoir, the final evolution of a psychic type, had just appeared nearby. Almost no one could resist a Gardevoir's gentle grace. If he managed to befriend one, a bit of training would turn her into an incredible partner. Of course, that hinged on whether she was willing to accept a trainer's bond. If her heart longed for freedom, no amount of persuasion would suffice. Unlike many others who relied on battle and brute force, Owen preferred to win over Pokémon with treats and kindness. In all the time he'd spent in this world, he'd never set out with the sole purpose of capturing wild Pokémon, until now. All right, he said to himself, determination settling in. Let's do this. With that, Owen strode toward the flower-strewn meadow, intent on meeting the Gardevoir face to face. Owen looked up at the Pidgeot perched in the giant oak. Pidgeot, he asked, hardly believing his eyes. Only a few days had passed, but his partner now radiated confidence. A soft, golden glow shimmered across its feathers, and, if Owen's eyes weren't deceiving him, a faint flame danced along its wings, making its orange-yellow plumage look all the more striking. Pidgeot! With a triumphant cry, Pidgeot launched itself from the branch in a swirl of sparks. Its long tail feathers left flickers of fire in the air as it swooped down and gently nuzzled Owen's head. Pidgeot, level 24 to 27 ability, Keen Eye. Nature, red individual values, HP 24, Attweet SP, AC 27, Def 17, Def 17, SP 26. Moves, Gust, Quick Attack, Lightning Flash, Whirlwind, Aerial Blade, Steel Wing, Hurricane, Tornado, Defog, Heat Wave. Friendship, 98. Unconditional Trust. Motivation, 75. Grow stronger quickly and reclaim our territory. Since absorbing a sacred feather from a Moltres, Pidgeot's plumage had taken on those fiery gleams, and though it only gained the new move Heat Wave, its overall potential soared. Owen smiled and patted his partner's head. All right, Pidgeot, let's head to Wutong Forest. With that, the two set off toward their next challenge. the ancient woodlands looming just beyond the horizon. Owen glanced at Pidgeot, whose feathers ruffled in recognition. No one knew Wutong Forest better than his trusty bird Pokémon. He planned to bring Pidgeot and his grass-type partner, the green ivy snake, on this trip. "I need you guys to come with me into Sycamore Forest," he told them. "That's your home turf, Pidgeot. We're going to look for another Pokémon there." "Pee-pee!" Pidgeot chirped, eyes sparkling at the mention of its hometown. It hopped in place, eager to go. "All right, then," Owen said with a grin. He held out Pidgeot's Pokeball, and with a tap sent his partner away for the journey ahead. Turning to the clear pool where Melodic glided gracefully, he stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Mienshao," he called, though the martial Mienfu, evolved Mienshao, watched him with its usual calm poise. "I'm headed into the woods. Would you like to swim in the river outside instead?" Melodic swayed beneath the surface, peering up at him. It let out a soft, curious trill, as if asking, "Take me with you?" Owen shook his head. "Don't worry, there won't be any battles this time. You'll be safer in the reservoir. I promise, once we're back, I'll see about widening this channel so you can enjoy the river whenever you like." He gave a reassuring smile before turning away to prepare the rest of his team for the journey into Sycamore Forest. Owen stood at the riverbank and called out, "If you want to play, you're welcome to join me." Melodic surfaced for a moment, disappointment flickering in its eyes. "You," it seemed to say, then shook its head, slipped beneath the surface, and peered up at Owen through the water. It was content to stay where it was, no river games required, and Owen didn't press the matter. Turning away, he strolled back past the cowshed, where huge milk churns brimmed with those green dumpling-sized pellets the cows like to snack on. There was no need to explain that now. He simply nodded to himself and headed upstairs to his room. Inside, Superior was patiently coaching his ice Vulpix on how to cloak its paws in ice energy. Owen didn't have any grand expectations for the little frost fox. If it wanted to battle and grow stronger, fine. If it preferred a quieter life and evolved later, that was fine too. But there was one non-negotiable rule. Vulpix had to learn to sheath its feet in ice before wandering through the plantation. Owen had grown tired of muddy paw prints all over the breeding house floor, and worst of all, across his bed. He wasn't about to grab a mop every time his white-furred companion padded through. Owen crouched beside the little ice Vulpix as it busily chattered, its frosty paws scraping at the thin layer of ice caking its claws. When it finally stopped and gazed up at him with bright, eager eyes, the fox let out a soft, triumphant whine. "See? I cleared them all off," it seemed to say, lifting a paw for inspection. Owen smiled and reached into his pack, producing a small, glowing energy cube. "Good job. Here, you've earned this." The Vulpix's tail whipped back and forth in excitement. It scooped up the cube, nuzzled it affectionately, and began nibbling happily, its earlier shyness completely forgotten. Once the reward was gone, Owen coaxed the fox gently back into its Pokeball and clipped the device to his belt. He turned to the tall, emerald-green snake coiling around a nearby branch. His companion, the green ivy snake. "I wanted to give Vulpix a chance to prove itself," Owen explained. "Now that you've seen how quickly it mastered that task, I think it'll be a great addition to our team." The green ivy snake uncurled slightly, its golden eyes glinting with mild curiosity. After a moment, it lifted its head and in a soft, sibilant voice asked, "So, you're looking to catch even more Pokémon?" Owen met its gaze and grinned. "Yeah, there's a whole world of partners out there. Let's see who else is waiting for us." The snake flicked its tongue once, as if tasting the prospect of new adventures, and coiled back around the branch. Together, the two trainers, one human, one serpent, prepared to press on into the wilds, eager to discover what other Pokémon they might befriend next. Chapter 54. Owen paused mid-sentence, surprised by the slightly sulky tone in the green vine snake's mind. "What's wrong? Isn't this great? I've always wanted to catch a psychic Pokémon. It'll make harvesting fruit and vegetables so much easier." The green vine snake curled its lips, telepathically conveying a simple, "I know." Owen nodded, still not sensing the creature's disappointment. Deep down, the snake missed cuddling against him like it used to before its evolution. But now that it had taken on this sleek, powerful form, when would it ever get to curl up in its trainer's arms again? Owen didn't notice its wistfulness. He simply waved to Chin Shu, who was watching over the shop, then set off with the green vine snake toward Wutong Forest. They bypassed the familiar bluestone path, heading instead through a narrow trail that led straight to the river's edge. This wide, bridgeless river formed a natural barrier between the wild Pokémon of the forest and the safety of the nearby town. For most trainers, it posed no real challenge. Flying Pokémon or a makeshift raft could cross in moments. But to anyone journeying on foot, it was a reminder of how invaluable a winged partner could be when exploring the untamed wilderness. Owen stared across the rippling water, excitement and determination shining in his eyes. "Once we make it to the other side," he said, "we'll find that psychic Pokémon, and this'll all be worth it." The green vine snake stiffened, flicking its leafy tendrils in agreement. Even if it felt a twinge of envy for the lost snuggle time, it trusted Owen's plan. With a crackle of latent psychic energy, the pair prepared to continue their adventure into Wutong Forest. Owen strolled along the riverbank, the town's rooftops fading behind him. Across the water, half hidden by reeds, stood an old wooden house that looked as though it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in decades. He paused, then crouched and released his Pidgeot from its Pokeball. "Pidgeot!" he called. The bird let out an excited chirp and fluttered down beside him. Owen glanced over at his companion, the newly evolved green vine snake. "Vine snake, why don't you hop back into your Pokeball for now?" Pidgeot's frame was still too small to carry two passengers, Owen and the vine snake, at once. If he insisted they both ride, the poor bird would have to cram the snake tightly under its wings. The vine snake blinked, then let out a soft, hesitant tang, as if to say, "You can hug me like you used to." Owen laughed and set down his Pokeball. "All right, then." He scooped the vine snake up into his arms. Instantly, its tiny, vine-like hands curled around his forearm, while its tail snaked gently around his ankle. Pidgeot fluffed its feathers, clearly delighted by the reunion, and the three friends prepared to cross the river and explore that neglected old house together. "Congratulations! Your green vine snake's happiness has risen from 40% to 80%. Rewards: 15 bags of golden Keela, 1 intermediate magic candy, and 1 special scale fruit." Owen blinked at the prompt hovering in midair and glanced down at the coiled serpent in his hand. "Everything all right, Tang Tang?" he asked. The green vine snake's cool scales seemed to glow with a sudden warmth. "I'm fine," it replied in a soft hiss. Owen smiled and turned his attention skyward. "All right, Pidgeot." With a graceful sweep of his arm, he summoned his Pidgeot. The great bird descended from the clouds, talons extended. Owen caught its right claw in his palm, and Pidgeot lifted him effortlessly, bearing him off toward a nearby wooden hut perched on a gentle rise. The cabin was simple, a single door and a small window set high in the wall. Through the narrow opening, Owen spotted an elderly man, roughly 60 years old, seated in a carved wooden chair. He wore a turquoise robe and thin-rimmed glasses, and he was absorbed in a yellowed tome. Even as Owen and Pidgeot came to a halt outside, the man didn't look up. Instead, he spoke in a low, measured voice. "Another trainer seeking Gar, devoir," he muttered. "This one won't be so easy to control." Owen stepped up to the ranger's cabin and called out, "Uncle Liang, it's me." The old man, officially appointed by the League as the Wutong Forest Ranger, had stood watch here for as long as Owen could remember. He seldom ventured into town, only appearing now and then on the bluestone path with a sack of provisions. As a child, Owen had been fascinated by the gentle Lucario that always escorted him. Now, hearing that familiar voice, Uncle Liang pushed himself upright in his chair. His cloudy eyes brightened, and at last a smile creased his weathered face. "Owen," he greeted. "I heard you skipped college and reopened your family's cultivation house and farm. Is it true?" Owen nodded. From his storage orb, he produced a small bundle of fresh taro and plump chili fruit. "Here, these are from the plantation. Please try them. If you like them, you're welcome to come by any time and pick whatever you need." Uncle Liang accepted the offering with a warm nod. Owen felt a swell of gratitude. This was the man who had scooped him into his arms and comforted him when he was just a boy, his steadfast protector through every season of youth. Uncle Liang has spent decades watching over Wutong Forest, preserving the delicate balance between the town and the woods, and keeping wild Pokémon from wandering into town. That dedication alone has earned him everyone's respect. All right, then. I'd better take a good look, Owen said, handing over the plastic bag. Uncle Liang accepted it with a warm smile. When he peeked inside and saw the fresh vegetables, a flicker of surprise crossed his face, only to be replaced moments later by a proud nod. Your cultivation skills are every bit as good as your parents were. He glanced at the Snivy and the Pidgeot standing by Owen's side. So, are you here to find a Gardevoir in the forest? Owen scratched the back of his head, giving an embarrassed smile. That's the hope, but taming one always comes down to fate. If luck doesn't fall my way, I've got a backup plan. Catching a Caterpie. Gardevoirs are notoriously elusive, but Caterpies are common. Owen intended to raise one into a Butterfree. With its pollen-spreading ability, a Butterfree would be invaluable for the flowering crops on his plantation, boosting both fruit set and harvest yields. Owen paused in the clearing, looking around. By the way, where's Lucario? He asked. He wanted to feed Lucario a few energy cubes, and whatever bonus rewards Lucario might earn. Uncle Liang chuckled. Lucario's off in Wutong Forest. The trainers there aren't particularly strong, but they're always up to mischief. We couldn't very well leave him unguarded. If you're hunting for Gardevoir, though, head to the forest's eastern edge. Owen's eyes lit up. He usually ignored offhand remarks, but he took Uncle Liang's advice seriously. After all, it concerned Lucario. Thanks, Uncle Liang, he said, and without another word, he set off toward the east side of Wutong Forest. The eastern reaches of Wutong Forest opened onto a broad, glassy lake. The pale blue water mirrored an orange-gold sunset, rippling now and then under a gentle breeze. At the water's edge stood a solitary figure draped in a flowing, dark blue skirt. She stared intently at her reflection, as though captivated by her own image. Or perhaps for some other reason only she understood. Owen paused, then shook his head. Shanna, he murmured under his breath, let's set up camp here for the time being, and see if there are any fruit trees nearby we can forage from. Chapter 55. Under Pidgeot's vigilant guidance, Owen navigated the twisting trails of Wutong Forest without a hitch. Before long, he spotted his first caterpillar, but something was off. Its body gleamed a pale yellow rather than the familiar green, as if it had only just emerged from its cocoon. A fine down still coated its back, and each segment of its plump form looked so tender that a single touch might pierce its delicate skin. The instant the caterpillar noticed Owen, it froze and shivered in place, terror etched on its tiny face. Owen knew the little creature wasn't afraid of him, but of the majestic Pidgeot perched behind him. For a moment, the caterpillar trembled helplessly. Then it rallied, recalling its only means of defense. With a panicked buzz, it spat silk threads at Owen and Pidgeot. A bright flare of fire from Pidgeot incinerated part of the silk before it could even reach its target, reducing the shimmering strands to ash in midair. The rest of the silk whirled harmlessly past Owen and drifted to the forest floor. Kneeling, Owen plucked one of the fallen threads between his fingers and watched it snap like gossamer under the slightest pull. In that instant, he was reminded both of the forest's hidden dangers and of how fragile life could be on the road to evolution. Owen crouched at the forest's edge, his eyes narrowing as he spotted something small wriggling among the ferns. A scanner ping sounded at his wrist device, displaying species, green caterpillar, gender, female, special feature, scale powder, rank D green, individual values, HP 5, attack 8, defense 14, attack 28, SP defense 16, speed 10, level 3, moves string shot tackle, bio, a newly hatched heterochromatic caterpillar. Affection 0, it doesn't know you yet. Comfort, NIS 75. Why are birds out hunting leaves so soon? Green caterpillars were among the most common forest Pokémon, and among the most hunted. Their shiny yellowish-green scales made them easy targets, and very few survived beyond this first fragile stage. Owen felt a sudden pang of compassion. If this one were a rare shiny variant, it might not live long enough to reveal its true colors. With a swift motion, he brought up a Pokeball. The caterpillar paused its chewing, sensing danger. It spun a silk thread toward the ball, hoping to ensnare it, but the silk passed straight through the smooth surface. Panic flashed in its mismatched eyes as it realized this strange orb would not be kept at a distance. Owen's thumb hovered over the button. Easy now, he murmured, voice soft so as not to frighten it further. The forest around them fell silent for a heartbeat, until, with a single click, the Pokeball sprang open, light flooding the glade. In the blink of an eye, the caterpillar was drawn inside. The ball snapped shut, its red surface gleaming. Owen exhaled, relief washing over him. He had saved one more creature from a harsh world, and perhaps found a loyal new companion in the process. Owen hunched beside the newly emerged Caterpie, expecting the little Pokémon to writhe in pain, but nothing happened. After a long moment, the green caterpillar blinked its large emerald eyes open and stared up at him. "Hey," Owen said softly, "why are you keeping your eyes closed? Want to come home with me?" "Home?" Caterpie tilted its head, antennae quivering in confusion. "Where's home?" With a gentle smile, Owen reached into his pack and pulled out a neatly wrapped green rice dumpling. "If you come with me, you can have one of these every day." The moment Caterpie saw the dumpling, its eyes lit up. Even cold, the sticky rice treat gave off a sweet, floral perfume so enticing it made the little bug's mouth water. It glanced at the floating dumpling, then up at the Pidgeot circling overhead, and a spark of hope flickered through its antennae. If this was its last meal, it was worth it. Gathering courage, Caterpie climbed onto Owen's outstretched arm and nibbled at the dumpling. Its tiny jaws worked eagerly until the last crumb vanished. Owen's grin widened. "So, will you come with me?" "You'll have this food every day from now on," Owen promised in a gentle tone. "You won't ever have to worry about your next meal." "Have this every day?" The Caterpie repeated the words in its mind, and before it knew what was happening, it found itself nodding in agreement. Owen grinned. "All right," he said. "I'll take that as your consent." He drew a Pokeball from his belt and rolled it toward the little creature. 3 crimson rings of light flashed around the button before the sphere clicked shut and fell silent. Owen's smile widened as he clipped the new Pokeball to his waist. He'd only gone in expecting to catch an ordinary Caterpie, but this one's unusual coloration would add a brilliant splash of color to his team once it evolved. The quick catch filled Owen with confidence. He felt his luck was finally turning. But after that, every wild Pokémon he encountered proved disappointingly routine. Beedrill, Sandshrew, Diglett. He'd even toyed with the idea of catching a Diglett for himself, but thoughts of Grandpa Chin's pet mole gave him pause. With a reluctant sigh, he abandoned the notion and pressed on. Owen glanced down at his little companion, a vine serpent he'd nicknamed Teng Teng. True to its nature, just like his old mentor Grandpa Chin, it was fiercely independent and hated being a burden. If Teng Teng ever discovered that Owen had captured another Pokémon to take its place, he was certain it would never help him again. Or, at best, it would grudgingly assist but refuse his food offerings. He sighed and looked toward the dense trees of Wutong Forest. "All right, Teng Teng, let's keep searching for that Gardevoir." They pressed east, but by the time the sun began to sink, their search still showed no sign of their elusive target. Owen paused on the shore of a quiet lake, watching the sky turn orange as dusk settled in. He let out another long breath. Maybe Gardevoir just doesn't like humans, he mused. Earlier, he'd tried every trick he knew, energy cubes infused with a sweet pink perfume, fruit lures, even songs. Nothing worked on Gardevoir. Other Pokémon came running, but thanks to Teng Teng's coiling strikes and the fierce flaps of his Pidgeot companion, they'd been gently driven off without any serious harm. Teng Teng slithered closer, tilting his head. "Are we still looking?" he seemed to ask, his emerald eyes glinting in the fading light. Owen rubbed his forehead, feeling the weight of frustration. Maybe he'd been too focused on appearances. After all, watching Mewtwo pluck ripe berries off the trees with effortless grace had given him lofty expectations. Still, he wouldn't give up now, not when they were this close. "Yeah," Owen said at last, determination returning to his voice. "We keep going. Gardevoir's out there somewhere, and I'm going to find her." Owen let out a frustrated sigh. He'd scoured the forest all afternoon, hoping to catch a psychic-type Pokémon, but with no luck. "That's it," he muttered. "No more hunting. Let's head home." He looked up at the sky, where his trusty Pidgeot circled overhead. "Ivy, hop back into your Pokeball first. I'll have Pidgeot bring me straight back. It's getting late." This time, Ivy the Superior didn't hesitate. With a graceful swirl, she slipped into her Pokeball. Owen reached up, grabbed Pidgeot's talons, and the two friend Pokémon took off into the sunset. By the time they landed, the clock had just struck 6. The breeding house door was already locked for the evening. Owen set his bag down, about to find another way in, when a small, red spark of electricity shot down from above. A Rotom, its face lit with urgency, hovered in front of him. "Loto! Loto! Master! You're finally home!" The Rotom buzzed, voice quivering. "Something's happened. At 5 o'clock, a Gardevoir just appeared in the plantation and took control of Milotic." Owen's heart skipped a beat. He dashed forward, ready to unlock the door. Whatever trouble was brewing, he knew he'd have to act fast. Chapter 56. What? Owen stared at Rotom's hovering form, baffled. He'd combed the entire plantation and found nothing, yet now the little electric spirit claimed the ripe harvest was all here, right on his own land. "Exactly," Rotom buzzed anxiously. "It's picked every ripe fruit in the fields." Before Owen could even latch the front door, he scooped up Pidgeot's talons. "Let's go now!" "Pidgeot!" The great bird gave a long, indignant cry. It had been entrusted with guarding and caring for the crops, and now every last healthy, sun-ripened tomato, pepper, and melon gone. Flames danced along Pidgeot's feathers as it beat the air and surged skyward. From 10 meters above the ground, Owen's heart sank. Where lush rows of vegetables and vines once thrived, only green stalks and a handful of hard, unripe fruits remained. And by the reservoir, every harvested tomato, pepper, and squash was frozen in midair, as if caught in some magic trap. Floating just above the water's surface was a small blue figure, its form rippling in the sunlight. Owen gripped Pidgeot's leg, eyes narrowing. Whoever, or whatever, had done this was still here, and he intended to find out why. As if alert to Pidgeot's approach, the mysterious figure lifted its head, its blood-red eyes fixed on them from the sky, an unmistakable Gardevoir. Below, Melodic's relentless hydro-pump slammed into an invisible barrier, only to be repelled time and again. "Descend," Owen said, drawing on the power of Changpan to calm Pidgeot's nerves. The great bird relaxed its wings and began to drift down. Owen offered a reassuring pat, then released his grip on Pidgeot's wing. The Pokémon settled lightly on the ground a few meters away from the Gardevoir. Owen hovered another 2 or 3 meters above the earth before touching down. He stood face to face with the Gardevoir and studied it closely. This was no ordinary specimen. Its hair and hands were a vivid cobalt blue, the lining of its white gown tinted the same shade, and the usual chest gem had been replaced by a glowing, blood-red crystal that matched the fierce gleam in its eyes. A faint telekinetic breeze billowed the gown around its legs, lending the figure an ethereal grace as it remained perfectly still, its expression unreadable. Owen straightened his shoulders. "Gardevoir, are you the one running this plantation?" He activated his specialized ability. A soft hum resonated in his vision as he engaged the eye of exploration, ready to uncover whatever secrets lay hidden behind that crimson stare. Owen's heart skipped a beat as he took in the scene. According to Rotom's analysis, Melodic lay utterly motionless under Gardevoir's psychic sway, unable even to struggle. He'd suspected this Gardevoir was powerful, but not like this. Rotom's synthetic voice rattled off the details. Species, Gardevoir, shiny. Gender, female. Ability, telepathy. Qualification, gold. Level 78-79. IV-HP 31, ATK 18, Def 25 SP. AC 31 SP, Def 31, SP 31. Skills: Call, Telekinesis, Magic Flame, Shadow Clone, Misty Terrain, Charming Voice, Psychic, Draining Kiss, Moonblast, Future Sight. Bond and Affection, none. And most startling of all, this Gardevoir had once been a Ralts cursed by the nightmare god Darkrai. The curse energy still tainted her, turning her eyes an ominous crimson. Anyone who slept near her would be tormented by nightmares. Owen swallowed hard. He'd trained and battled dozens of top-tier Pokémon, but he'd never seen ordinary reach this level. Before he could form another thought, that Gardevoir spoke directly into his mind, in a voice as clear and gentle as a mountain spring. "Who are you?" she asked silently, eyes glowing. Owen steeled himself. Whatever he'd stumbled into, there was no turning back now. Owen held out a handful of ripe berries and met Gardevoir's serene gaze. "I'd like to trade these," he said softly. "What do you want in return?" Gardevoir inclined her head in a slow, deliberate nod, but remained silent. Owen frowned. "You can't expect me to just take some thing without asking," he added. A fair trade means both sides agree. Before he could say more, Gardevoir gently tapped his shoulder and turned toward the reservoir. Her eyes urged him to look. Owen followed her gesture and saw his Mienshao standing guard at the water's edge. The sleek, purple-furred fighter trembled with barely contained energy, muscles rippling as though eager to break free. Tendrils of power crackled around Mienshao's wrists, draining off into the humid air, only to be drawn back in by the ocean crystal buried beneath the reservoir's floor. Owen's heart pounded as he watched Mienshao's aura intensify. 31, 32, 33, 34. The surge was relentless, and he instinctively braced himself for what would come next. Mienshao, gender female. Features, charming physique, qualification, gold strength, level 34 to 37. Skills, water gun, water wave, bubble impact, charming voice, water ring, tornado, dragon tail, self-regeneration, ice beam, mysterious guard, muddy water, hydro cannon. Intimacy 100, unconditional trust, pleasure value, mind 20, unbreakable, but why? Owen stared in astonishment as the telekinetic barrier, so effortlessly cast moments ago, shattered like fractured glass. Heart pounding, he sprinted to the reservoir's edge, coiled his arm, and drove his fist into the water. The crack that followed echoed across the still surface, proving that sheer force could overcome even the most subtle of psychic walls. At the same moment, Melodic surged through the reservoir, its lithe form cutting through the waves. It slipped onto the shoreline with effortless grace. Owen didn't lower his guard, though. His gaze darted upward to the pale Gardevoir hovering motionless in the sky. "It's okay," he called softly, kneeling to reassure Melodic. The serpent-like Pokemon's eyes flickered with relief as Owen's hand drifted along its smooth scales. Standing, Owen met Gardevoir's unblinking stare. He knew exactly what the silent tableau meant. Gardevoir had lent its power to Melodic, forging that barrier and even strengthening Owen's partner. In return, Owen was expected to hand over the promised fruits and vegetables. He clenched his fists. On the one hand, it was a remarkable shortcut, no grueling training sessions, just a simple exchange, and Melodic emerged stronger. But on the other hand, it felt too easy. Relying on these psychic bargains threatened to undermine the effort and growth that came from genuine training. Owen squeezed his eyes shut, steeling himself. Gardevoir had done its part. Now it was up to him to decide whether he would continue down this path of quick power or rediscover strength the old-fashioned way. Owen watched his Melodic glide through the clear water. With just a dozen intermediate magic candies he'd collected recently, he could have boosted her power as easily as a gym session, or even pushed her temporarily into Overlord territory. But that kind of sudden surge would overwhelm Melodic's ability to control her energy, causing dangerous spillover, just like what had happened with Dragonite, and forcing her to absorb the ocean energy crystals through sheer emotional coercion was never Owen's way. He wanted his Pokémon to grow strong and happy on their own terms. He stepped forward, addressing the stranger who had been hovering at the water's edge. "You seem reasonable," Owen said calmly, "but pressuring my Pokémon with those emotions isn't what I believe in. Besides, I placed those energy crystals here myself. They have nothing to do with you. Melodic will mature in her own time, without your special methods." His eyes drifted to the pile of fruits cradled in the stranger's arms, a surprisingly large haul for a single Gardevoir. "And why collect so many fruits at once? Are you raising a Ralts?" Owen knew those fruits wouldn't do much for a fully grown Gardevoir. He suspected she intended to share them with other Pokémon. "Gardevoir?" he called again. The Gardevoir lifted her head, her normally serene expression momentarily giving way to disbelief. Cold, emerald eyes locked on to Owen's as she processed his question. Despite her surprise, she made no move to drop the fruits. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft lapping of water against the shore. Owen's question snapped the Gardevoir back to full awareness. It blinked slowly, creasing its forehead as it studied the small pouch of berries in Owen's hand. "Gardevoir," it murmured, uncertainty coloring its tone. "How am I supposed to trade these fruits?" Even now, it could still feel the force of Owen's punch, that overwhelming rush of power that had floored it. Since its exile by its own kind, it had scavenged and skulked on the fringes of civilization, but never stood against a human as strong as this. After a tense moment, Gardevoir lifted its head and spoke, voice steady, but laced with caution. Very well. The exchange is simple. You work for me. Chapter 57. Owen stared at Gardevoir, fully aware of how powerful the psychic Pokémon could be. In his haste, he had reflexively thrown a punch wrapped in a shimmering psychic barrier. When the barrier shattered on contact, nearly as if it had been drained of its power, both Owen and Gardevoir froze in surprise. Was my punch really that strong? Owen wondered. Or did any energy-based attack lose nearly all its force when aimed at me? He cleared his throat. Gardevoir, he said, I have a part-time job for you. Gardevoir's large, gentle eyes narrowed in confusion. A part-time job? It echoed, its voice tinged with curiosity. Owen nodded, stepping closer. Exactly. I need help harvesting these fruits and vegetables. Tell me how many Pokémon you think you can handle working alongside me, how many berries we can pick in a day, and we'll call it a job. It's simple. You gather, I'll pay you. The psychic Pokémon glanced down at the scattered produce at its feet, a rainbow of peaches, apples, and leafy greens. By instinct, it would have preferred to use teleport and carry everything off in an instant. It had done so before with less scrupulous trainers, never looking back. Yet something about Owen felt different. He'd held his own against Gardevoir's barrier with nothing but his bare fist, and survived. He'd offered fair terms too, instead of forcing obedience. Gardevoir hesitated, toes sinking into the soft soil. Finally, it bowed its head. Very well, it said softly. I will help you. Owen allowed himself a small grin. Great, let's get to work. Owen watched the Gardevoir warily, noting the flicker of curiosity in its eyes. He offered a friendly nod. You're welcome to take some of these now if you'd like to feed the Pokémon in your care. I don't mind waiting for your answer. This Gardevoir clearly possessed extraordinary power, and had undoubtedly survived on its own in the wild for who knows how long. Owen knew that trickier schemes, like trying to snatch that little green caterpie it protected, would never work. It was far wiser to appeal to the one thing Gardevoir valued above all, the well-being of its charges. With that in mind, Owen produced a small bottle and gently tossed it through the air. Before it could clatter to the ground, the bottle hovered, wrapped in an unseen telekinetic force. As it drifted closer, a single cube, infused with dragon fruit extract, slipped from the container and tumbled toward the Pokémon. At once, Gardevoir's eyes widened. Even as a powerful psychic type, it could sense how revitalizing these specially formulated energy cubes would be. Owen smiled. That's just one flavor, he said. I've got several more, each designed to help different kinds of Pokémon grow stronger. Owen watched, a flicker of envy in his eyes, as Gardevoir's pale form shimmered in the moonlight. Garde, the Pokémon said softly, its voice trailing off. I promise. I'll give you my answer by tomorrow night. And with that, it vanished, leaving only empty air and a few scattered fruits where it had stood. Teleport, Owen murmured, staring at the spot where it had disappeared. He let out a long sigh, then sank down onto the grass. Reaching into his belt, he drew the Pokeball he'd used earlier that day. With a quiet click, he pressed it to the ground. The ball unfurled, and a tiny green caterpillar wriggled free, its big, curious eyes taking in the world. This will be your home from now on, Owen said gently. Feel free to eat anything you like. Just stay away from the tree fruits and leaves, okay? The caterpillar turned in a slow circle, then plucked a blade of grass and nibbled it once. Its eyes grew wide, and it let out a small mental cheer. So much food. It dove back in, chowing down with eager bites. Satisfied, Owen stood and brushed grass from his pants. Rest up, he told the little Pokémon. We've got a lot of training ahead of us. Late that night, in the eastern reaches of Wutong Forest, silver moonlight drenched the lake's glassy surface. Not a ripple stirred. From the shore, a nigh round head broke the stillness, rising from the underbrush as quietly as a leaf drifting on the wind. The azure-blue creature lay on the sandy shore, its eyes as round and bright as copper bells. One of its fin-like flippers rested gently on the beach, while a small pink nose quivered as it sniffed the air. After a moment, it called toward a dense thicket at the water's edge. Ball? Are you there? Are you there? From the bushes, a tiny fire-type chick hopped into view, its feathers crackling softly. Chickie, is that you? Ball, the sea lion replied in its sing-song voice. At their call, a plump, fruit-shaped creature tumbled out of a low-hanging branch and landed face-first on the sand. It sat up, blinking its round eyes. "Juju, you're back already?" The sea lion glanced around, ears twitching as if expecting danger. "Chicky, it'll be here soon, right?" Together, the three wild Pokémon, Poplio from Alola's shores, Torchic from the distant Galar region, and the little Bounsweet they'd nicknamed Juju, had somehow converged on this unknown beach. Poplio's stomach grumbled loudly. "Ball," it said with a forlorn look. "I'm so hungry." Torchic ruffled its feathers thoughtfully, looking between its two friends. With a sudden chirp, it hatched an idea and hopped toward the thicket. Juju shrank back, trembling. "Juju, stay here. Don't move. What if we get lost? We don't even know where we are." But Poplio was already paddling toward Torchic, determination in its bright eyes. Adventure, and more importantly, a snack, awaited them beyond the tree line. Chapter 5. Owen's Gardevoir crouched behind a fallen log, her eyes darting through the underbrush. Beside her, a young Celio whimpered softly, its round form trembling with hunger. A Torchic hovered anxiously on the log above them, its tiny wings fluttering as it whispered, "What if there are dangerous Pokémon nearby? We'll be eaten." Celio pressed its flippers together. "Shh, let's wait a little longer." Torchic clucked in agreement, but both glanced nervously toward the forest's edge. Just then, Gardevoir stood and held out a gloved hand. "Garna?" she scolded, her telepathic voice firm but low. "Didn't I tell you to stay hidden?" From the shadows stumbled a small Spinarak, its 8 legs skittering over the leaf litter. The 3 Pokémon gathered around their protector, eyes bright and hopeful. Celio lumbered forward first. "We're so hungry," it said. "We thought you'd never come back." Gardevoir said nothing. Instead, she reached into the pocket of Owen's jacket and retrieved a glowing energy cube. "Here," she murmured, "eat this." The cube pulsed softly in her palm. At the sight of it, all 3 Pokémon lit up with excitement. They snapped it from her hand and began to nibble greedily. Gardevoir watched them for a long moment, and for once, her expression softened. These 3, Celio and Torchic, had been abandoned by their trainers. Spinarak was left alone after her mother was captured. Owen had found them all wandering helplessly through the woods. As the moonlight filtered through the trees, Gardevoir's eyes shone with a rare tenderness. Whatever dangers lay ahead, she would protect these little ones, her charges, in Owen's stead. Together, they feasted on the energy cube, drawing strength for the trials yet to come. Ever since Owen was expelled from his own family as a child, he's felt a deep sympathy for any Pokémon left to fend for themselves. When he first found the 3 of them, Ball Sea Lion, Fire Pheasant, and Little Tianjuju, they'd never known the wild and were on the brink of death. Ball Sea Lion and Fire Pheasant had been raised in captivity, and Tianjuju had lost her mother far too soon. Owen couldn't stand the thought of any creature enduring the same helplessness he once felt, so he took them in. After all, having once been caught alone in the rain, he wanted more than anything to be an umbrella for others. Chapter 58. That night at the breeding center, Owen slid open his window and let the silvery moonlight pour in. The sky was studded with stars, a living painting against the inky black beyond. Down in the quiet town, only the occasional chirp of a wild Pokémon broke the stillness. Owen sank onto his bed, gaze fixed on the shifting shadows on the wall, wrestling with a single question: how to lift the curse Darkrai had placed on Gardevoir. A curse, he reminded himself, was pure malevolent energy, a debilitating status far worse than a simple injury. From what he'd observed, Gardevoir's affliction aligned most closely with the nightmare trait, an inherent, ghost-type malady that saps willpower and twists dreams into living torment. The closest parallel among known moves was the dreaded Destiny Bond, a last-ditch technique that dooms you and your foe to share the same fate. But Gardevoir hadn't used Destiny Bond. Darkrai's dark power had stamped a far more insidious curse onto her spirit. Owen wondered if the legendary Evergreen elixir could purge such a deep-rooted darkness. He murmured the name and shook his head. Sure, simple poisons or burns could be cleansed by standard remedies and the natural vigor of a healthy Pokémon. But this was Darkrai's domain. He had no guarantee that even the rarest tonic could unravel a nightmare born of pure phantom energy. In the end, the only one truly capable of breaking free would be Gardevoir herself. The thought tightened something in Owen's chest. He clenched his fists, determined to find another way, anything, to help her conquer the darkness within. Owen paused to consider his plan. He'd set aside a few special energy bars, formulated to boost resistance against negative status effects, for Gardevoir, hoping it would tip her decision towards staying with him. He sighed, but he didn't beat himself up. The incident at the plantation had been so sudden that he couldn't fault himself for not anticipating everything. With a shrug, he shifted his attention to the nightly ritual he'd fallen into, tallying up the day's special rewards. He flipped open his ledger. July 28th, income, 255,600. Total balance, 1,004,000. Special items received today. Dragon Sun Fruit 5, total 24. Special Scale Fruit 12, total 36. Intermediate Dragon Sun Fruit 3, total 7, and so on. Reviewing these numbers had become as routine as breathing. Every evening, without fail, Owen recorded what he'd earned and then set about crafting the energy bars he'd need for the following day. But tonight, a fresh thought struck him. Ever since word got out about his bond with Gardevoir, professional trainers had poured into town, eager to challenge him or recruit him. Their Pokémon were remarkably powerful, and while normal energy bars could raise a Pokémon's enjoyment level, the gains were modest at best. If he wanted to stand a chance against these top-tier trainers or convince Gardevoir to remain by his side, he'd need something stronger. Leaning back in his chair, Owen closed the ledger. Tomorrow, he decided, he'd start experimenting with an upgraded formula, one that not only boosted resistance, but also dramatically increased a Pokémon's spirit and loyalty. With Gardevoir and these new arrivals in mind, he had his work cut out for him. Owen knew that even the tastiest energy blocks could grow boring if you ate too many of the same kind. Variety was key. Not only did different flavors keep trainers interested, but they also encouraged Pokémon to keep training. And for many Pokémon, strength was the greatest delight of all. With that in mind, he decided it was time to experiment with a budget-friendly defense energy block. He slipped into the kitchen and retrieved the ingredients from his storage ball. First, he pulled out the spicy tomato fruit that Gardevoir had harvested that morning, then the moo milk he'd drawn directly from the farm's big milk tank. Finally, he selected 2 dragon clear fruits, small, guava-like fruits whose high market price often ran into the thousands per piece, and set the M on the counter alongside a stack of pomelo fruit. Owen planned to create 2 distinct flavors, mixing dragon clear fruit with pomelo, spicy tomato, and moo milk. He'd make 50 blocks in all. Holding one of the dragon clear fruits in his hand, he paused to calculate. The price point couldn't be too low. He needed to cover costs and pay for quality, but it also couldn't be so high that only elite trainers could afford them. Owen wanted an average trainer with a modest budget to be able to buy these defense blocks every now and then to give their Pokémon an extra edge in battle. Satisfied with his reasoning, he set to work. As the first blades of dawn filtered through the kitchen window, the rhythmic chop of fruit and the soft churn of milk told him he was on the right track. In a few hours, Owen would have 2 new, irresistible defense energy blocks, each delicious, each effective, and each just within reach of any trainer who wanted to strengthen their team. All right, let's make 2 prototypes, one priced at 10,000 credits and the other at 20,000. Owen settled on 2 new energy cube recipes. The 10,000 credit version would be spicy tomato flavored, and the premium 20,000 credit cube would feature a creamy moo milk infusion. With the plan in place, he set up his workstation. First, he tossed ripe tomatoes into his blender, liquefying them into a vivid, fiery juice. Next, he poured fresh moo milk into a chilled pitcher, giving it a gentle stir. He then peeled and chopped several dragon fruits and dragon clear fruits, tossing them, along with peeled pomelo segments, into a heated mixer. For the next 3 hours, Owen monitored temperatures, adjusted blending speeds, and molded the semi-solid mass into 2 perfect cubes, one gleaming ruby red, the other a smooth, milky white. When he finished, the cubes rested on his counter like polished gems. Owen retrieved his datapad and scanned the red cube first. Sea-level, dragon energy cube ingredients. Dragon fruit, spicy tomato, pomelo. Manufacturing notes. Though the process is relatively straightforward, the craftsmanship is remarkably precise. Effect: restores a Pokemon's physical strength and temporarily boosts its defense stat. He tapped the white cube next. C+ grade Dragon Clear Energy Cube ingredients: Dragon Clear fruit, Moo Moo fresh milk, pomelo. Manufacturing notes: requires slightly more refined blending and temperature control. Effect: restores physical strength and grants a stronger defense bonus than the standard cube. Owen surveyed his creations with satisfaction. Both cubes would revitalize a Pokémon and fortify its defenses, but the Moo Moo Milk version, at C+ grade, promised the superior performance that trainers pay top credit for. Owen rubbed his temples and checked the clock. 11 o'clock at night. He stifled a yawn. Producing this many energy cubes by himself was wearing him out, and if demand kept growing, he'd never keep up. He toyed with the idea of recruiting another breeder to share the workload, but as soon as the thought crossed his mind, he shook his head. He still wasn't ready to entrust anyone with his precious energy cube formula. People's motives could shift on a whim. He'd learned that lesson long ago. Pokémon, on the other hand, Pokémon were far more straightforward. A spark of inspiration lit Owen's eyes. Pokémon could handle the grunt work. Most ordinary Pokémon wouldn't be precise enough, but psychic types could. With telekinetic control, they could mold the cubes almost as skillfully as human hands. Better yet, if he could find a psychic Pokémon with data manipulation abilities, it could ramp up production to industrial levels. In an instant, his mind conjured the image of that massive, four-legged steel behemoth, Metagross, its metal limbs moving with uncanny precision as it assembled cube after cube. Vines of possibility snaked through his thoughts, growing ever wilder. And then, just as quickly, he deflated. Metagross? That was asking for the moon. Rarer than most psychics, fiercely independent, and if it Eve, and agreed to help, impossible to keep under control in a small workshop. Owen sighed and closed his eyes. There had to be another way. Owen stared at the price list again. Where on earth could he find a Metagross? Without a personal net worth in the hundreds of millions, it was simply out of reach. He'd once thought a six-figure daily income made him wealthy, only to discover that the Pokémon he dreamed of still cost far too much. He exhaled. Money just slips through your fingers. Tang Tang! The green vine snake, which hadn't let itself rest all day, wrapped a vine whip around a chilled glass of Moo Moo milk and offered it to him. Thanks, vine snake, Owen said, crouching to stroke its scaled head. The icy drink revived him. After a quick wash, he climbed into bed. On the mattress lay his Alolan Vulpix, curled into a perfect ball, a tiny bubble drifting from its nose as it slept soundly. Owen tiptoed closer and, out of habit, opened the system's latest notification. His eyes widened at the brief alert. Alolan Vulpix detected. Has someone deliberately targeted this regional variant? He blinked, shrugged, and settled back against his Vulpix. A contented smile tugged at his lips as he drifted off into a peaceful sleep. Who wouldn't want an ice-type Pokémon around on a sweltering summer day, especially when you're trying to sleep? Just outside the treehouse, the green vine snake narrowed its eyes, then slithered gracefully inside. Chapter 59. July 29th, dawn's pale light filtered through the workshop windows as Owen woke at his usual hour. He moved with quiet efficiency, retrieving the defense energy cubes he'd prepared the night before and arranging them neatly on the display shelf. Behind him, Chin-Shu, his young assistant, held a clipboard with the new pricing sheet. Owen studied the numbers for a moment, then took a scrap of cardboard and propped it up beside the cubes. In bold, uneven strokes he'd written, "Satisfaction guaranteed. Return for full refund, but no further purchases." The policy couldn't have been simpler. If a customer found the defense cubes ineffective, they were welcome to bring them back, though they would forfeit the right to buy from Owen's shop again. Chin-Shu's eyes flicked between the sign and the price list. 10,000, 20,000, she muttered, her tone edged with disbelief. That's expensive. She ran a hand through her hair. On her modest salary, she could barely afford 1 cube a month. Owen offered her an encouraging grin. Quality comes at a price, but trust me, these work. The process might still be rough around the edges, but the results speak for themselves. He leaned forward to tap the crates. For hardy Pokémon like Sandshrew or Onix, these cubes provide a real defensive boost. Worth every penny if you're serious about battle readiness. Chinshu bit her lip, glancing down at the figures again. Owen straightened, confident in his product. If even a handful of trainers came back telling success stories, the sign would seem more like a promise than a warning, and word of his defense cubes would spread faster than any advertisement. Chinshu glanced toward the small, unoccupied room, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Owen, can I get one of these energy cubes too? He raised an eyebrow. Sure. What's up? She bit her lower lip, playing innocent. Squirtle's been nibbling all day, but still seems hungry. I think the energy cubes from Want Supermarket just aren't to his taste. Owen chuckled. Of course you can have one. Her face lit up, and she dabbed at a faint blush. Hey, since I'm on your team, could you give me a discount? He leaned against the shelf and grinned. All right, half price. As Chinshu handed over her payment, Owen watched her quietly. He'd actually been waiting here for her, and he knew exactly why Squirtle had been so picky. Every morning, Chinshu brought her pet turtle to work and left him in that little room. But at noon, when Owen wandered out to the plantation to feed his Minas, Squirtle would slip away, paddle up the irrigation channel, and poke his big head in, grinning like he owned the place. Owen had noticed how clever Squirtle was about getting extra treats. Every time Owen slipped an energy cube to Minas, the little turtle found a way to share it, often by sneaking off with part of the cube to feed Sandshrew. Oddly enough, Squirtle seemed to thrive on these food heists, and its delight at each successful mission only grew. After a bit of thought, Owen decided to make things easier. One morning, he quietly removed a section of the low fence beneath the orange tree near the far end of the yard. Now Squirtle could slip through the gap, carry an energy cube over to Sandshrew, and retreat, all without anyone spotting him. And he'd instructed Squirtle not to let on that the cubes came from him. Owen chuckled to himself at the arrangement. He was effectively spending part of his monthly stipend on Pokémon treats, but what harm was it? A little extra fun never hurt. Besides, Chinshu, the girl helping him here, had no idea how many cubes Squirtle was delivering to Sandshrew. Owen figured he didn't need to worry her with the details. After all, she was young and didn't require much spending money. When Owen finally gave Chinshu the go-ahead to feed their Pokémon as she saw fit, her face lit up with excitement. She bounced around with such enthusiasm, it was clear she was having the time of her life. If Owen's system could gauge human pleasure value, hers would be oft. He charts. Owen slipped a short note onto the work log, "Keep it up," and strolled out to the plantation. Whatever excitement had taken place yesterday seemed to have left no lasting mark. The fields looked just as lush as ever. In fact, his Gardevoir had already arrived at dawn to harvest all the ripe fruits and vegetables. First, Owen reached for his storage orb and withdrew the green grass ball he'd crafted 2 days earlier. He tossed it to the Miltanks, who lowed happily as they munched it up. He then glanced over at the little caterpillar he'd tamed yesterday. It was sprawled on the grass, busily nibbling at stray blades. Owen pulled out a grass dumpling and held it in front of the creature. "Which do you want, this or the grass?" The caterpillar paused mid-chew and lifted its head. Its big black eyes widened when they caught sight of Owen, and it wiggled in delight. Only yesterday it had cowered in fear of the Pidgeot overhead. Now it seemed to have found itself in a real feast. "Yo-yo," it chirped. A clear, "Yes, please." Owen grinned and shrugged. "All right, then. Green dumplings from now on." Owen set the last green dumpling down on the grass just outside the cowshed and glanced up at the herd of dairy cows, their ears flicking inquisitively. "If it rains, go hide in here, okay?" he said, patting the doorframe. Then he addressed the cows directly. "I'll keep making these dumplings for you, but when you come in to eat them, be gentle. Don't bully her." He'd been overzealous with his cooking lately. No matter how many dumplings he left by the trough, the cows devoured every single one, patting their bellies even as they produced more milk than ever. It was sweet, but unsustainable. Owen really needed to control his portions. One cow mooed decisively. "Understood." Another stamped a hoof. "No, stop." A third spoke softly. "But she's so small. Shouldn't we feed her milk?" "Yes," a fourth chimed in. "Let's give her some fresh milk." Owen's eyes widened. They weren't talking about each other. They were talking about the dumplings, as if they were live calves in need of nursing. He He shivered at the thought. No, that's not, he stammered. I used your milk to make these dumplings. The cows exchanged uncertain moos. One ventured, Really? Owen let out a sigh of relief. Trust me, he said, rubbing his temples. You absolutely don't want to see that. The Miltanks let out contented moos and promptly returned to their meal, while the little green caterpies nibbled happily on the grass beside them. Owen watched the whole scene with a pleased nod. His herd and his bugs were getting along just fine. He turned and strolled down to the reservoir's edge. As he approached, the graceful melodic broke the surface, its pearly scales catching the sunlight. One of its long crimson whiskers drifted on the breeze and brushed Owen's cheek. He reached out, ran his fingers over its silken texture, and couldn't help but smile. Melodic, he said softly, I think I'll widen this water channel for you. That way you'll have plenty of room to swim. How does that sound? Melodic lifted its head inquisitively, then gave a gentle nod as if to say, Perfect. Great, Owen replied. I'll call Huba's construction crew. Those guys did an amazing job on the cowshed last time. He drew out his Pokécom, thumb poised over the call button, when suddenly a flash of blue light appeared between him and Melodic. Owen's heart skipped a beat as the shimmering figure took shape before them. Chapter 60. A familiar pale blue figure hovered in the soft morning light. Owen's heart skipped a beat. Gardevoir had arrived even sooner than he'd hoped. Gardevoir? He called, incredulous. He'd told her he had work for her today, but he hadn't expected her to show up before dawn. Gardevoir floated serenely, held aloft by invisible telekinetic force. Not even the slightest breeze could stir her flowing skirt as she waited, unmoving and dignified. Owen allowed himself a small grin. That's wonderful, he said. I do need your help today. We're going to widen the diversion channel for Melodic's pond. But as you know, whenever humans build or dig, the water turns murky with silt. He paused to make sure she was listening. I'd like you to erect a telekinetic barrier between the channel and the reservoir. Just a temporary wall of force, enough to keep any sediment from dirtying the main pool. Gardevoir's expression flickered with surprise. In all her experiences with humans, she'd rarely encountered one so confidently direct her. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering the request. Owen watched her for a moment, then added, Take your time. Once the barrier's up, our laborers can start digging without worrying about fouling the water. He gave a reassuring nod. Thank you, Gardevoir. I knew I could count on you. At his words, the air around Gardevoir shimmered. Slowly, a translucent, rippling wall of energy appeared, stretching from one bank of the channel to the other. A perfect, invisible shield protecting Melodic's reservoir from the coming construction. Owen surveyed the remnants of yesterday's haul, energy cubes and tree fruits. The three little ones had devoured every cube, leaving only the fruits, which hadn't proved nearly as popular. That's why he'd come out to this plantation today. He tapped his phone screen and called the construction crew he'd liaised with earlier. The moment they heard it was an invitation from the Wutong Town plantation. They agreed without hesitation. Hold on, they'll be here any minute, Owen said, hanging up. He glanced at the Gardevoir hovering in front of him and couldn't resist activating his exploration eye just one more time. Its affinity score had climbed to level 5, better than he'd dared hope. Owen felt a surge of satisfaction. Gardevoir, he murmured. The psychic Pokémon was quiet for a moment, studying its surroundings. Finding nowhere to rest, it simply floated in midair, its eyes calmly observing Owen in return. Owen squared his shoulders and met Gardevoir's gaze. Gardevoir, he said calmly, do you know you're carrying a curse? The moment the words left his lips, Gardevoir stiffened. A ripple of psychic energy burst forth, invisible yet potent, spiraling around Owen like a tide. Owen, the Pokémon whispered, shock and apprehension in its voice. How could he possibly know? Gardevoir had borne that curse since it was a child, each psychic surge deepening the malediction's hold. Unwittingly, any creature who fell asleep within a kilometer of it became a conduit, its dreams twisted, the curse spreading through their slumber. That was why Gardevoir was forever on the move, seeking remote places where it could rest without endangering others. Owen held his ground beneath the shimmering aura. I'm a Pokémon breeder, he explained, and I command the Evergreen, an ability that lets me see the flow of energy around every living being. Last night, I followed your aura and discovered the curse embedded in your powers. Gardevoir's luminous eyes widened. No one had ever confronted it with such understanding. Owen continued, voice softening. But this isn't an irreversible doom. Think of it more as a gift passed down from another Pokémon. You're simply not yet strong enough to master it fully. With training, you'll learn to control and channel the energy rather than let it control you. A hush fell over the forest, broken only by a breeze rustling the leaves overhead. Slowly, Gardevoir lowered its head, the tense quiver leaving its form. Is Gardevoir powerful? Owen thought, awe settling in his chest. Undeniably so, and with guidance, it would grow even stronger. Owen stared up at the Gardevoir, its slender form glowing faintly in the dusk. At level 70+, it was easily the most powerful, ordinary Pokémon he'd ever encountered, yet he knew it still fell far short of the nightmare god, Darkrai. Gardevoir's crimson eyes narrowed as she studied him. Garna, she asked in that soft, telepathic whisper, do you have a way to lift this curse? Owen shook his head with a rueful smile. I wouldn't call it a solution. You actually have two options. First, track down the Pokémon that cursed you in the first place and force it to undo the spell. Second, find a Pokémon whose energy is directly opposed to yours and have it cast a blessing on you. The two forces would cancel each other out, only it's much harder to pull off because your curse is so deeply rooted. He paused, choosing his words carefully. What I think you really need is to learn to control it. Gardevoir tilted her head in silent curiosity. Think back, Owen continued. When the curse first appeared, its influence spread far beyond your body, didn't it? Over time, as you grew stronger, you gradually learned to contain it within yourself. The Gardevoir fell quiet, memories flickering through her mind like distant stars. Since childhood, the curse had gifted her with extraordinary power, uncanny intuition, and breathtaking speed, but it had also plagued her with unending torment. After a long moment, she nodded. For the first time, Owen saw a flicker of resolve in her eyes. Together, they would master this power, one step at a time. Gardevoir hovered tensely above the tangled roots of the ancient tree. At first, its curse radiated for 3 kilometers, but as its power grew, the radius contracted until it barely reached 1 kilometer. To control that malignant energy at will, Gardevoir knew it would need a trainer far stronger than anyone it had ever met, someone more powerful than him. That hope, it admitted, was all but hopeless. Still, Gardevoir clung to one remaining possibility, Owen. So far, this young trainer had demonstrated genuine care and talent, qualities the Pokémon desperately needed. Yet Gardevoir also remembered how it had once sought help from the most celebrated trainers across the region, and none could break or tame the curse. Could Owen succeed where they all had failed? I'm gonna need more than words, Owen said softly, stepping forward. Without hesitation, he withdrew a small, opaque vial from his pack. Inside floated a cluster of milky white cubes, each the size of a berry. Owen carefully twisted off the cap, plucked out a single cube, and tossed it gently toward Gardevoir. The cube shone as it spun lazily in midair. Owen called it an S+ assimilation energy cube, one of his own creations forged from rare A-rank moo milk and select mid-grade special scale fruit. Its effects, he explained, were potent. In the short term, it could boost a Pokémon's special attack stat by 15 to 50%. With regular use, it could even raise that stat permanently. As a bonus, it strengthened resistance against status ailments and made it easier for a Pokémon's moves to inflict those conditions on opponents. Gardevoir caught the cube in a careful telekinetic grasp, eyes glowing with renewed hope. If Owen's concoction could buttress its willpower and sharpen its psychic faculties, perhaps, together, they could wrest control of the curse and end its grip on the forest once and for all. Effect: Assimilation, Grade 3. With prolonged use, the recipient becomes more resistant to attribute restraints and gains finer control over external energies. Owen stared at the shimmering S+ energy cube hovering before him. He'd originally crafted this rare cube for Pidgeot's flight training, hoping to boost its aerial proficiency, but its scarcity had kept him from ever using it. Now, determined to help his new Gardevoir reach her potential, he dug deep into his reserves. Using telekinesis, he held the cube, be suspended in midair. Gardevoir tilted her head, crimson eyes flickering with curiosity. A moment later, unable to resist any longer, she lunged forward and swallowed it whole. Immediately, raw energy coursed through her veins. Her vision dimmed, then cleared, and the dull haze in her eyes gave way to a radiant glow. Gardevoir tested her aura, willing it to obey, and for the first time, she felt the binding curse yield entirely to her command. A bright chime echoed in Owen's mind, followed by a system notification. Congratulations, host! You've raised Gardevoir's pleasure rating from 0% to 75%. Rewards unlocked. 10 packs of advanced golden Kella, 10 advanced magic candies, intermediate tier superpower. Owen blinked. Superpower? His heart skipped a beat. He flipped open the system interface and stared in disbelief at the rewards list. There it was, in black and white, intermediate tier superpower. No mistake, he really had earned a superpower.